All right, here we go. Drive time. Wednesday afternoon, about 12 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It's still a little chilly today. It's about 60 degrees. A little cloudy. Sun's trying to come out here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway media studios. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you with us. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson today producing the program, booking the show behind the glass. A lot to do on a jam-packed Wednesday edition of the program as we get you halfway through that work week, and we will get you one day closer to the weekend. A lot of conversations continue about the future of college football as meetings are going on, namely in the Big Ten. The future of the college football playoff, 24 teams versus 16 teams, the SEC and ESPN battling the Big Ten and Fox. Of course, television executives are going to be heavily involved in this process because they're the moneymakers that are driving the entire thing. So we'll get the latest. Tony Petitti laying out the 24-team, the reasoning behind the 24-team model and why the Big Ten is driving that thing and driving it rather hard. So we'll get to some of that stuff on the show today. The latest after the comments made by Iowa State's athletic director, essentially saying, like, I'm sick and tired of this conversation about these two conferences dominating the landscape and maybe leaving us. We should just leave them. Obviously, that's a nothing burger. But, of course, college football conversation this time of year, usually it pertains to, expansion, conference realignment, what the future of the CFP will look like, media rights deals and such, as there's not a lot of tangible college football news to get to. But we'll bring you the latest, as obviously college football is a big deal in these parts, home of the Utes. If anything is prevalent and relevant to the Big 12 Conference at the University of Utah, we'll cover that on the program. So we'll bring you the latest there on the show today. The New York Knicks completed a comeback for the ages last night. Prior to last night, teams that trailed by 22 points in the NBA playoffs were 1-594 in the last 595 playoff games. The Knicks were down 22 points to the Cavs and then outscored Cleveland 44-11 the rest of the way, and they took game one in front of what looked like an awesome crowd at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. And tonight, hoping to get another good one. Game one between San Antonio and Oklahoma City was awesome. Game two tonight on NBC and Peacock, 6:30 Mountain Time is your tip there, as San Antonio leads that series 1-0 after a historic performance from Victor Wembanyama. We are, about a month away. About a month away now from the NBA draft. NBA Combine is behind us. Every day brings another rumor about what Washington could potentially do with the number one pick. Today there was a report that Cameron Boozer is very much in the mix to be the number 2 pick in the draft. Well, why is that relevant? Because the Utah Jazz own the number 2 pick in the NBA draft. Obviously, a lot of excitement about what next year could look like for the Jazz. So we'll get to some NBA playoff storylines today on the program. The latest on the world of professional golf. LIV is going to pitch a new model amid what is now a bankruptcy report after the public investment fund backed by the Saudi government has pulled their funding from the offshoot golf league known as LIV Golf. Of course, the PGA Championship now behind us. Aaron Rise, your champ. So we'll bring you the latest there. RSL has one more game before we say goodbye to our local soccer club for 2 entire months for the World Cup break. In the MLS calendar, we'll say goodbye for a little while to make space for the World Cup that, of course, will be played in our region. RSL is taking on Minnesota on the road coming up on Saturday. It's an early kick, kids, 2:30 Mountain Time on Apple Television, so keep that in mind. Utah Royals will also play on Saturday at 4:30 Mountain Time. They're going to be taking on Denver out in Sandy at America First Field. That game can be seen on ION, potentially my favorite streaming service. Royals are unbeaten in 8 games, playing very high-quality soccer right now. Not a lot of NFL news, but Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers just hides for a while, then decides to take front stage. He said he's going to retire after this season. He has informed the media that this is his swan song. This is his final year. He has signed a one-year contract worth up to $25 million with the Steelers and will reunite with Mike McCarthy, who coached Aaron for 13 years with the Green Bay Packers. So a little bit of NFL news for you today. All right, good guest list. Right out of the gates, Andy Larson, our buddy from the Salt Lake Tribune. We'll do some jazz. We'll do some draft. We'll do some RSL with Andy on the show today. Excited to welcome in Patrick Overholt today, former Major League Baseball player who has created a new golf league here locally with an interesting twist, and he's making a difference and helping a lot of people in our community that struggle with addiction. So excited to bring Patrick in today. Pablo Mastroeni, the head coach of RSL, will join the program, and then Dan McMahon, our celebrity reporter from ESPN. We'll check in with Tim for the latest on the Utah Jazz and the latest on the Walker Kessler situation, latest on the NBA playoffs. And then we'll go from there. Andy Larson, Patrick Overholt, Pablo Mastroeni, Tim McMahon, me, Spence Checketts. Hello, how are you? All of you, the great listeners, on this Wednesday afternoon. And that guy, Porter Larson, who turned the TV off in the fourth quarter after the Knicks were down 22 points, didn't you? Don't lie.
I didn't. I was close to walking out the door. I was headed to the gym, waiting for the game to end. And I was close to just like, I'll listen to the rest of it on the radio. And then the Brunson burner started to light up. And man, that was a really fun watch. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. It's a game one, right? As we know, that doesn't tell all when it comes to a 7-game series. But not only to win, but to win in that way, it makes me pretty confident going forward. I don't know that the Cavs have many answers for what we saw at the end of that game because their backcourt just can't guard. I mean, they just don't guard. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm going to continue to just attack James Harden. If Donovan just wants to kind of stand in the corner on defense and Jared Allen, Evan Mobley have to clean everything up, I think the Knicks have a good chance at it. That was a lot of fun coming down the stretch last night.
The sixth game in this postseason run for the Cavs where Harden has had more turnovers than field goals made. Like they're winning in spite of him, not because of him.
And you can't do that as a option two, I guess, on that team, and especially when on the other end of the floor, Spence, the other team is just coming at you. I mean, every time down the floor after that 7-8 minute mark in the fourth, Brunson would come and get the ball. Sometimes they would do like a short double team until he passed it off, or they try to trap him up at the center court area. But then he'd just get a pick until James Harden was guarding him and then go to work and eat his lunch over and over and over again. Keep doing it. I mean, game two, I want Jalen Brunson to have the ball in his hand every time, and I want him to go get a switch until James Harden's guarding him and see if he can stop you.
Yeah.
Because that recipe that clearly worked in the second half is one that there's no reason to not continue to go for it.
And Timothy Chalamet, if you're listening, we know that you are. I'm glad they showed him in the first half. He looked like a little kid that had his cookies taken away, and then rejoicing in the fourth quarter. I'm happy for our guy Chalamet.
The celebrity row of the Knicks, which is a lot more like I'll give credit to Jack Nicholson, but a lot more like in tune. Ben Stiller, Timothy, some of the folks that you see in Spike Lee, of course, they're there every night. They're there every week, and they're big basketball fans too, so it's fun.
Can we ask Jimmy Fallon to stay home, though? I don't want Jimmy Fallon part of Nick Nation. No, dude, he's the worst. He's not funny. He's corny. He treats his staff poorly. Like, they'll show Celebrity Row. I'll get pumped. I'm like, oh, my dude Sean Penn is there. You mentioned Spike and Ben Stiller and his wife. And then they show Fallon. I'm like, oh, man. I forgot Fallon pretends like he's a Knicks fan.
Okay.
Anyway. All right. We'll bring in Andy Larson today. We'll do some jazz. We'll do some NBA draft, about a month away from the NBA draft. But before Andy stops by, Wednesday afternoon style, courtesy of our good friends at IFA Country Stores, it is time now for your opening tip. Now, With IFA's Weed and Feed, you'll grow strong, healthy, dark green turf without a weed in sight. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move, now at IFA.coop or at one of your local stores. All right, hopefully you're tuning into the NBA playoffs, and a reminder of how much fun pro basketball is in the spring. And the hope is that next spring the Jazz will be involved somehow, some way. I am confident that this is going to be a much improved group. Obviously, they'll be much improved. How much improved is predicated on what happens on June the 23rd. The latest reports are that Washington is actively holding conversations with other teams about the number one pick. And if you're Washington, if you're Utah, I mean, hell, if you're Memphis, if you're any of the teams in the top 4 or 5, the fact of the matter is you could use more than just one piece. And we talked to Gordy about this. We talked to Smitty about this. Is Washington in a place where they'd be willing to move off of one for multiple assets to try to expedite the growth of a franchise that hasn't been relevant, quite frankly, in a number of years? They had a minute with the Brad Beal, John Wall backcourt. They had a minute where it looked like maybe they could have something sustainable with those two young guards. But it didn't last. John Wall couldn't stay healthy. They get rid of Brad Beal. They bring in Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and ultimately Anthony Davis is not a player that can be counted on anymore to stay healthy. So if he is healthy all year, he's still an elite front court NBA player, but when's the last time we've seen that? It's been a long, long time. They're a little bit like the Jazz in a way. They have a good grip of young players, Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, players like that. And then bring in some vets like Anthony Davis and Trae Young to maybe help these young players understand what it takes to be a pro in pro basketball, like the Jazz have done with Lauri Markkanen. Jaren Jackson Jr. is only 26 years old, but the Jazz have a couple of vets on the roster. We'll see what they do with Nurkic and Kevin Love. I can't imagine they're part of the future plans. Combined with some exciting young players like a Keontae George. I do think Bryce Sensabaugh has played himself in the future plans. I don't know about Kyle Filipowski and Cody Williams. Those are the two players I still have questions about. And I think Isaiah Collier can give you 14, 15 minutes off the bench, right? So like last night when Donovan was really cooking Deuce McBride, you got to give Mike Brown credit. He went with Landry Shamet in the fourth quarter and overtime, and Shamet turned Mitchell's water off and hit 3 big three-point shots as well. Collier can give you that type of, I think, last night Landry Shamet, 17 minutes, 9 points, and mostly it was his defense. And, of course, Isaiah Collier, Keontae George, the perimeter players have not shown the ability to guard at a high level, and that has to come because even though Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. are elite front court defensive players, the Jazz have to improve their perimeter defensive acumen, and they have to improve it quickly and intensely, quite frankly. It has to be not just a little bit better than it has been over the past couple of years. It has to be a lot better. It has been historically bad for the past couple of years. But watching spring basketball, of course, love seeing the Knicks do well. I'm always a guy that wants to cheer for my childhood teams. I want to see the Jazz win. I want to see the Knicks win. I want to see them do well. So it was really fun last night to watch that amazing comeback after it looked like they were cooked. I mean, I wasn't going to turn it off. What else are you going to watch last night? I mean, fire up a little Daily Show, I guess, but I wasn't going to turn it off. But I did not think they had a shot in hell to win that basketball game. Cleveland was 28-1 when entering the fourth quarter with a double-digit lead. And I referenced this stat earlier. In the past 595 playoff games, teams that are down 22 points in the fourth quarter are 1-594. Now they're 2-594. It was insane. Watching OKC and San Antonio should be terrifying for any team in the Western Conference. Assuming full health the next 5 years or so probably belongs to them. But I also watched through the prism of how much fun it is here in Salt Lake when the Jazz are playing spring basketball. Some of my favorite memories of this career or being a kid or being a fan is watching Jazz basketball at the Delta Center when they have a good playoff run, dating all the way back to John and Carl, then going over to Booz and D. Will, and then Memo in that group. Then, of course, a 3-4 year window with Donovan and Rudy and Quinn as the coach in that group that was really, really exciting. So what can next year be continues to be the question. And we will start to have answers after June 23rd when we find out what the Jazz are able to do in the NBA draft. Report today that Cameron Boozer's camp believes he's in the mix for the number 2 overall pick. And I'll go back to what a lot of the NBA people, the pro personnel people we've had on the show continue to say. If you think he's the best player, you simply take him. You look at the Jazz front court, it does seem like an A.J. DeBonsa or Darren Peterson would be a more welcome addition as far as where they fit. But if Danny and Austin Ainge have done their calculation and they think Cameron Boozer is the second best player, what does that mean for what we could see on draft night? Only time will tell. Of course, the Walker Kessler question is still out there. They've got a $15 million non-taxpayer exemption they can use on maybe a veteran piece to bring in. And then we'll see what the team looks like before we can kind of analyze whether or not we'll have fun spring basketball next year here in Salt Lake City. All right, we'll catch our first break of a Wednesday show. Andy Larson, live in studio, coming up next on ESPN 700. So I've been working on a playlist the past month or so, and it's all Lilith Fair 90s female pop artists. Rocking a little Sarah McLachlan in the car today. Very motivating. Andy Larson is a millennial. So do you even know what I'm talking about when I say Lilith Fair?
No.
No?
I mean, I've heard the name before. I know she's a famous person, but I'm not no. I mean, it has no cultural relevance to me.
You're not a huge music guy, are you?
Not in general, no. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm listening to music on the way to and from the office, but that's like a 10-minute drive. You know, I can just.
Did you do Kilby this year?
I did not.
Neither did I.
No.
The lineup came out, and I'm like, this is the first time I feel old. I think I recognize 5 artists.
The reviews on it, everyone who wins seemed to have a great time though. So
well, good.
Maybe we were wrong not to go. But,
probably. I mean, it's a hell of an event, and people come from all over the country for Kilby Court.
Yeah. I had a buddy who was holding up five of his friends in his house just because they were in town for the festival.
Very nice.
It's it is a big deal now, and because I think it is one of those rare music festivals that is getting good reviews from the people who go.
Yeah, I went last year because Weezer was playing, and that's kind of in my Gen X wheelhouse. But yeah, the lineup came out, and I was like, nope, no idea. So
not a Modest Mouse guy.
I do like Modest Mouse. That was probably one of 4 or 5 artists that I recognized. But a shout out Kilby Court. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, live in studio. How are you, bud? What's the latest?
Good, man. It's been great. Honestly, we've been over at the Trib just really excited and working hard on the transition to free. I don't know if you have seen or heard, but the Salt Lake Tribune is now free for all with no paywall, so that's really cool, and we've gotten some really good feedback so far.
So may I air a grievance, as it were?
Sure.
So I got the email. Thank you for being a subscriber, because the minute you guys went paywall, I subscribed that day.
Okay.
So what was that, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that?
Longer, yeah. But
so I've been subscribing, paying for the Trib, and they're like, hey, here's an email. Here's a thank you email. Here's the link you click to just cancel the subscription, and thank you very much. I go into the area, I cancel the subscription. I get an alert from Zions Bank that you guys charge me $80 the minute I cancel my subscription. So I view that as my final donation.
Thank you.
To the Salt Lake
was
Tribune.
This before or after last week? This
was whenever the email was sent out. This was last week.
Okay. Well, we have customer service people who can help you out with that if you so choose, or if not, thank you for the donation. We appreciate it.
I might send Falk a Venmo request. Just hit my Venmo for $80, please. But no, all good. You guys do great work, and I want to support you, as you know. All right, how has the adjustment been going for our listeners? Andy was on the Jazz Beat forever, and now you've transitioned into kind of a different role. What's the latest with that?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, it's been really fun to work with other people around our newsroom on really important projects that's going on in Salt Lake and Utah generally that aren't sports related, right? So working on a UTA fair change story that's going to be coming out this weekend. Working on a immigration story and kind of looking at arrest data, looking at a park story and all the different parks around Salt Lake County. Kind of all these different ways that I think I can use. I was a math major and have frequently been a nerd on your show.
Love it. Gotta have it.
Station
Need
generally.
Need my nerds.
So kind of getting to do that with kind of other stuff that's really interesting to people has been really fun.
So maybe Andy Larson, the Jazz fan, can kind of come back out again, right? Yeah. So I've got to know where you were when the lottery was on television, and then we're all like, okay, 6 is the most likely land. Oh, it's not 6. It's not 5. And then when it gets to 4, you're like, okay, as long as we're in the 4, we're good. 4, 3, boom, 2. Okay, and I had a visceral reaction. I was like, hell yes, finally. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I was helping my brother do his flooring in his new house, so this was not a glamorous environment, but it was fun to watch, right? And I didn't expect necessarily. I expect always the most likely thing to happen, which was that the Jazz would drop to 5 or 6, and thought that was looking at the Keaton Wagler level prospects, and then you get excited about what this means for the franchise, right? I mean, all of a sudden you do have kind of those franchise level pieces that I think the Jazz have been looking for literally the last 4 years of the rebuild, whether that be in the trade market or in the draft. They hope to get lucky before this. Now that piece is coming, and all of a sudden now the Jazz have one of the brightest futures in the NBA, except for the other 2 teams in the Western Conference who are really good.
Not just really good, but with like Bobby Marks did his future asset column today. Oklahoma City and San Antonio have a combined like 30 first and second round picks over the next 5-6 years. So it's not that they're only that they're good now, they're going to be good for a long time. But of course, Andy, the conversation comes down to what the Jazz should do if they stay at 2, or are you willing to sacrifice some assets to move up to 1 if you really think AJ is the guy and you think Washington has honed in on him as well? What do you think?
Look, I do think AJ is the best prospect in this class, and I do think that it is worth giving up something to go up and get him. I don't know that I would give up a lot, though. And like the Ace Bailey thing to me, that's too much.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the future first-round picks to me. Certainly not giving up, like a Lowry Markkanen or a Keontae George or anything like that. But, you sure for a Bryce Sensabaugh or Cody Williams, I think I'm, willing to make a deal like that. And maybe some combination of those pieces. And maybe Washington just looks at it and says, hey, we'll just take AJ and be happy with it. But I do think, Darren Peterson is a good enough prospect, and heck, so with Cam Boozer and even Caleb Wilson to like go out and be confident in taking those guys number 2 if your offer isn't accepted for AJ. I don't think the Jazz are going to be trying to move up to AJ because of the BYU ties or the Danny Ainge stuff. Like, I don't think that's really what it's about. I do just think AJ is a better prospect than Darren Peterson because he was out there on the floor. You're not at all concerned about like his health and injury, his mentality kind of stuff. And then when he played basketball in college basketball last year, he was the better player, and I think that means that, yeah, he's probably the better NBA prospect, and so that's kind of how I view it. And but I think the Jazz are not. I talked to them about this when I was covering the team. Talked to them about AJ and Darren and kind of what was going on at Kansas, and they said mostly, "Hey, we're excited to find out what's actually happening in Kansas," but they're not going to sell the farm, sell the rest of the project to go get an AJ when I think they really value their own guys and what they have building right now.
So, as I always say, if you want to know what's going on with your team, you listen to the local beat writers, you read the local beat writers, and because the Jazz have the number 2 pick, they've been in the national conversation a lot, and you hear a lot of the national guys say things where you're kind of like, I don't know. What's your understanding? Because a lot of people have drawn this kind of straight line between the narrative that Ace and his reps wanted Washington last year and whether or not that makes sense as a result of these trade conversations. Do the Jazz put Ace on the table, 2 and Ace on the table in exchange for 1 and like Bub Carrington or Bilal Coulibaly or something as a result of Ace apparently wanting Washington? What's your understanding of that?
They love Ace too much. I mean, the Jazz love Ace too much to trade him in this deal. I would be stunned. Like, it would be. I mean, this didn't come from like one of the top 4 decision makers or anything, but there was a person in the Jazz organization last year who told me that like, hey, we think Ace might be a better prospect than AJ.
Yeah. Now,
I don't believe that, and I don't think that that's necessarily how the Jazz view it overall. But I don't think they love Ace. They're not willing to give up Ace for AJ. I just that would absolutely gobsmack me.
I had somebody down there tell me, I'll tell you who it is off air. And again, like you, I don't think this is real, but the words that came out of his mouth were, I wouldn't trade Ace for the number 1 pick this year. Again, I don't know if that's real, but yeah.
Look, you should trade Ace for the number 1 pick. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about number 2 and Ace for number 1. And if the deal for me is Ace for AJ straight up, and you can have AJ and Darren Peterson, then yes, you do that. But
dude,
that's
Ace
not what we're talking about.
Ace and a future first for 1. Then you draft Devontae and Peterson. Both. Oh man,
yeah. I mean, you're just set up.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so let's operate off the premise that you referenced earlier, that Washington, like a lot of basketball people, have just done their analysis and calculation and said, we have 1. We're taking AJ. Sorry, we love him. I'm to the point where I just say, take Darren and go, and then here we go, and just go with him. Report today that Cameron Boozers can't believe he's in the mix for 2. Look, if you think Cameron Boozer's the best player at this point, take him, figure it out. But if Washington goes AJ and the Jazz stay at 2, what do you think they do?
Yeah, I think Darren makes the most sense. I do think that the Jazz like Darren a lot. There have been multiple reports of that, and that strikes me as true from my understanding of the situation as well. And just makes so much sense as a fit in terms of what the Jazz need as a kind of two guard who can play the one, wants to become a one, but we'll see. Clearly has size, defends well, can kind of play off-ball defense at a higher level than I think anybody else in the top 5 of this draft. And then, has superstar potential to be an offensive driver in a way that even Keontae George isn't. And I think Keontae George did some great things last year, but the Darren Peterson potential is all-NBA player, not all-star level player like you hope maybe Keontae can be one day. So, I think it's just the cleanest fit. I also think as much as Cam Boozer produced last year for Duke, and he did, the numbers are off the charts. I expect my analytical models will be, Cam Boozer number 1. I think you worry enough about how he translates because of his lack of athleticism and the defensive inconsistency from night to night that you have just as big of question marks about Cam Boozer as you do about Darren Peterson.
That's interesting you bring that up because you nerds do love Cam. Hollinger loves him as one.
Yep.
Haberstroh all year has been like, no, he's one. He's the best prospect.
Yeah.
So all the numbers goobs love him. Help us understand exactly why.
Because the efficiency, the output, I mean, he was a near triple-double guy in a lot of these Duke games at super high efficiency, got to the free throw line all the time. The defensive numbers are better with him on the floor. It's not like he's getting a lot of blocks and steals, but he gets more than you might think given how he moves. And then, Duke was better when he was on the floor, so the analytics like that a lot. You don't see kind of the difference in the actual numbers with his weaknesses. I thought that video, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, and actually I think Draft Express had this too, but the shuttle run with Cam versus Caleb, right? Yep. And Cam had a faster time despite kind of shuffling around that square, if you will, while Caleb kind of moved extremely athletically, but maybe less efficiently, and maybe that's what's going on with Cam. But I think there are enough questions about whether or not the bounce works at a guy who's, his body size is Bam Adebayo, right? He's got the same height, same weight, except he's not bouncy like Bam is. Does that work in the NBA? I think it works. It's just is this a Jokic level guy, or is this a Sengun level guy, or is this a David Lee level guy, right? And I think it's reasonable to fall into any of those categories.
Does he remind you of his pops at all? Because Carlos wasn't a freak athlete. He could get up, he'd dunk on you, but he wasn't some super bouncy freak athlete. Does Cam remind you of his dad at all?
Yeah, a little bit. And look, I think Cam's a better player and better prospect than his dad. And his dad was a really good player, as Jazz fans know.
Second round pick, though, yeah.
Yeah, was a second round pick. And I think reasonably had, some warts at Duke that, luckily the NBA figured out a little bit, and luckily Carlos figured out a little bit. But Cam's a much better passer. I think Cam's a little bit more cerebral than Carlos Boozer was. I expect him to be a very, very good NBA player. But there's a question mark about what that ceiling is. And one of these guys, I'm pretty sure, is going to make whoever they draft look bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see this being a draft where, the history of the number 2 pick isn't very strong compared to the number 3 pick.
Mm-hmm.
You could kind of overthink yourself into a Darren or a Cam, and maybe that guy doesn't work out in exchange for the other guy. But we just don't know at this point.
NBA Combine is over. I haven't seen anything with Peterson's medicals. It took you 6 months to land on the creatine thing. Come on, man. Do better than that. But have you heard anything about the medicals with Darren Peterson?
I haven't really. And the only other thing I'd add to this is, as it's a little sketchy. It took you this long to figure it out. And then point 2, the criticism at Kansas was not only availability, right? The words from Bill Self were not just, hey, we really wish this guy were injured, or it's weird that he keeps coming in, or these body cramps he's having are so weird. There was other frustrations going on about how his camp was approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that was they were being kind of secretive because they didn't know what was going on and didn't want to reveal they didn't know, or I don't know, right? But it didn't just feel like only a medical concern that folks at Kansas had with it.
Yeah. Let me throw a scenario at you that I really haven't even considered. So again, with some reporting that Cameron's camp thinks he's in the mix at 2. Memphis is at 3. Cam Boozer seems cater-made for the Memphis Grizzlies, right? I wonder if there's a world, because Danny, as you know, to remind our listeners, the year that Markelle Fultz, shout out Tony Jones, and Jason Tatum were available, Lonzo Ball to the Lakers, Danny did his analysis and said, we want Tatum. We know Lonzo's going 2. So here, Philly, you take 1, you take Fultz, we'll take 3, we'll take Tatum. And they got another asset that didn't turn out to be really anything, but Tatum turned out to be the guy of all those 3. I wonder if there's a world where Danny actually, or Austin, calls Memphis and says, you move up to 2, okay? And, if they like Cameron Boozer, do they move down to 3, let Memphis take Darren Peterson, and the Jazz take Cameron Boozer and get something else from the Grizzlies? I haven't even talked about them moving down.
No, neither have I. I mean, I think, don't the Grizzlies just kind of call the bluff at that point and be like, we don't think you're taking Cam?
Probably.
Given the logjam on the Jazz's roster at the 4, which I think is significant, right? Like, you have their 2 best players on the roster right now are both power forwards.
Yeah.
I would be, if I were in the Memphis front office, I would be skeptical that I should move up to number 2 to make sure that I get Cam Boozer.
So I guess the question comes down to, do you believe, and this is the age-old debate, if Danny and Austin and Zanuck and whoever's involved in this, if they come to their conclusion that Cameron Boozer is simply a better player than Darren Peterson, can they afford at this point in their team building to take the player they think is second best because he actually fills a need, as opposed to just taking the guy they think is the best player?
No, I mean, I think you take best player available no matter what, and they've said that a gazillion times. Like, they will be true to their evaluation process on this. I think, honestly, in that case, they really explore trading Lowry. And I don't, I think they like Lowry, and I think they like that Lowry is here, and there's definitely a world where Lowry is on, the next Western Conference Finals Jazz team, I think but I also think that they look at the age list of their roster and can kind of imagine doing something different. And, look, if you have to figure out that situation down the road, I think you can take Cam and then figure out the Lowry situation or your power forward situation generally, in 2027 or even 2028 at that point, a few years, once you understand if Cam Boozer really is an all-star or not. But yeah, I think you absolutely have to take best player available no matter what. You can't be cute about this.
Is there a world, because you referenced this earlier, watching Oklahoma City and San Antonio, specifically San Antonio, you're like, all right, when are we going to be in that space? Right. Lowry's going to be 29 this year. Is there a world where they say, all right, we believe San Antonio and Oklahoma City are miles ahead of everybody else and will be for about 4 or 5 years. So let's take Cameron and let's trade Markkanen and let's look at Ace at 19. Let's look at Isaiah at 21, Keontae at 22, Walker at 24, Cameron at 21. And now we start our timeline now and believe in 4 or 5 years when maybe they have to make some, when San Antonio and Oklahoma City have to make some financial decisions or their players are older, maybe that's our window. Is there anything to that?
Look, I think there is, and not even just because that's where those teams are, but because frankly the Spurs are young too, right? Like, Dylan Harper's 20, Victor's 22, right? Like,
with all the draft assets,
the Jazz
too,
are not really younger than the Spurs are, despite how good the Spurs are. But I think you do that just because you're not that excited about paying a 31-year-old Lauri Markkanen $50 million a year,
right?
And how does that really help you in 2030? If you think that this is the best time for Lowry's trade value, I think you explore that kind of deal. Even if Cam Boozer's not the guy, frankly, like even if you take Darren Peterson and you're just like, I don't know if this fit is working that well with Jaren, Lowry, and Walker. Those are already 3, 4/5s that you may not have enough minutes for. So we'll see, right? Like, I think it totally depends how this plays out. I mean, right now, does Kyle Filipowski get any minutes? Not that I'm trying to make room for Kyle Filipowski, but like, it's you do have a logjam kind of as is, and adding a 30-minute guy to that doesn't help.
Real quick on the Filipowski tip, I can remember a couple of years ago talking to you about, okay, of all of these draft assets that they have so far, because Keontae was struggling, Isaiah still can't shoot it straight, and you weren't necessarily presenting this as like awesome news. You're like, the best player of the group might be Filipowski at this point. I think at that time you were correct. He MVP of the Summer League the next year. Look, I think they tried to play him at center a lot this year, and that's unfair to him because that's not where he fits in the league. Of all of the young players on the roster right now, it's Cody and Filipowski where I'm like, I don't know, man. Are they European guys? Are they rotational pieces? Why don't you think he played better last year than all of us were expecting him to play?
I do think the center thing is part of it, but it's terrifying that he can't play center, right? Because he also is not so good at the power forward stuff that you really want to make room for him there. He's just so weak inside, right? Like, and actually his rebounding numbers aren't bad; they're quite good. But the defensive rim protection is awful. The strength in terms of kind of finishing through contact is not great. He's just, I mean, is soft the right word? He is kind of soft a little bit, and I don't think he doesn't play that soft, but he guys go straight through him. He's not a deterrent at all. So yeah, and so maybe you say, hey, you go into year 4 and figure that out, or what is it, is it year 3 or year 4 for him?
I think it'll be year 4 this year, right?
Yeah. So then maybe you are stronger and get the stronger lower body and can fight, and then all of a sudden, you like Kyle Filipowski a lot. But right now, can you imagine him in this Thunder Spurs playoffs? Like, he's not playing, right? So, you just I'm not honestly putting a lot of stock in Kyle, Isaiah, Cody. Until I see better play from them, Bryce. Until I see strong playoff level play for them in a way that they can bring something to, again, a series like against the Thunder or Spurs.
One more draft related topic, then we'll move on. I do want to get a little RSL thoughts. We'll see if our RSL resident fan is standing on his feet and shouting out Ray Allen, believing. Another national talking point regarding the Jazz and this draft kind of cycle. And it's pretty exciting because for the first time in the 50-plus year history of the Utah Jazz, they move up in the lottery and have 2 of the top 3 prospects with ties to Utah. Yeah. And I know some people kind of dismiss that. I actually think it's important because, look, the narrative, like the Jazz can't keep players because black millionaires don't want to live in Utah. Well, we couldn't keep the white guy that likes playing video games when he gets home from games, and Gordon Hayward left too. So draft, check, develop, check, retain, that's the box we have to check. So the narrative, and I don't know how much I buy it, that Ryan Smith has identified A.J. DeBonsa as a 15-year-old as the future of the Utah Jazz, so he gets him to Utah to play high school ball, he gets him to BYU to play college ball, and now the next step is to get him to the Jazz. Doug Gottlieb basically called it tampering. I mean, he went on this rant like this is what they've been trying to do since AJ was 15, 16 years old. AJ himself on the record, I want to play in Utah. How much is that intertwined into the tapestry of draft night?
You feel good about knowing kind of who AJ is because of his experience in Utah. And I do think that, you should consider whether a guy sees himself as too big for Utah at this spot. But I don't think it should be, the overriding concern, right? Like, if a player's not very good and he wants to stay in Utah, you don't care because you just want to trade him, right? So you gotta figure that out. I thought it was interesting, the Athletics NBA player poll that came out the other day. Only 5% of NBA players put Utah as a place they'd least like to play.
Yeah, saw that. Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's probably a better spot than Utah would have been in previous years. So I think that's really promising. I also do just think so much of this is up to timing and who's in charge and what your team situation is like at the moment. So like I didn't expect Donovan Mitchell to stay in Cleveland because I thought he wanted to go to New York. But nevertheless, Cleveland put quality talent around him that they could sell him on being a contender in the Eastern Conference for the years to come. And, I think the Jazz, if they have this kind of roster, is a place where players do want to play. So we'll see. And I think especially the kind of guys you want to play, right? Like if Will Hardy talks about building a selfless team and a team that works hard for each other and building, not just a quality, a collection of talent, individual talent, but an actual team, then you want guys who want to stay for each other, not just for where they're living, right? And so, I think you take that kind of stuff into account of like, hey, does this person fit in Utah from a basketball point of view? And then that person is probably pretty likely to stay in Utah just because it makes sense for them basketball-wise too.
I wonder if Washington, because I know you were helping your bro during the lottery. When it was announced that Washington had the number 1 overall pick, they flashed to AJ. And
I was watching on my phone. Don't worry, but
he looked like his dog had just died.
I do think if you're AJ, Washington was probably the situation you're least excited.
Sacramento, bro, come on.
You're right. Not Sacramento.
So I wonder if there's anything there. Like if there's any sort of Eli Manning, I don't want to go to San Diego, or AJ is just the kind of kid that's going to go wherever he's told to go.
I also, and I've talked to Kevin Reynolds about this, who, covered AJ at BYU and then now is our jazz beat writer. AJ's dream, I think, has always been to go number 1. Mm-hmm. I think that's been his kind of guiding star for the last few years.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would risk that to go to Utah.
All right, before I set you loose, if you believe, stand up on your feet, shout it out, Real, whatever those lyrics are. Shout out.
Nailed it first time. Don't pretend you don't know.
What's his name? Shout out our guy who wrote it.
The Rancid guy?
The Rancid guy.
What is his name? Dang it.
Shout out that guy. 8-4-1. That's even a better start when Chicho was doing Chicho things before he did the Chicho things that you don't want to be Chicho things. They're third in the West, 25 points. And look, like, we know that Diego's great. He's been great for a while. This Gozo kid is potentially the best talent that I've ever seen come through RSL, maybe with the exception of Javier.
He's the best. I'll say this. He's the best prospect RSL has ever had.
Absolutely.
We there have a 19-year-old who can do this.
I'm amazed. Like, almost every week he does something else where you're like, holy smokes, this kid has got it. Yeah. So your thoughts on where we're at? Your thoughts on what's next? Are we going to see these players moved on? And what's the Andy Larson RSL fan take now?
Yeah, look, I mean, this first half season has been awesome. I do think it's the most exciting attack in RSL history. I like what Diego Luna and Gozo are doing with Gila Vogi's been awesome. And then Sergi Solon's just is actually a designated player level forward coming out of the 30th pick of the MLS.
And he makes as much money as an Enterprise rent-a-car salesman.
Yes, makes $87,000.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely bonkers, and scored, I mean, just an incredible header last week.
Yeah.
So those 4 guys are awesome. 3 of those 4 guys definitely are going to want to move on to somewhere besides RSL in their careers. And Gozo has been extremely clear that he wants it to be this summer, immediately, right? And I thought the goal reporting was good that RSL is looking for $20 million for him in terms of a transfer fee, and I think that's probably what he's worth, right? Like, I mean, Gomez was older and not this good, and was sold for $12 million. So, yeah, look, I think extremely fun first half of the year, and then RSL's got some decisions to make, and I think the biggest thing for me as an RSL fan is like, okay, Kurt Schmidt and Jason Kreis have to show that last go around was a mistake. That, you can't buy Diogo Gonçalves, you can't buy Dominic Markzuk, you can't buy Nelson Palacio. These need to be extremely, extremely, extremely good signings, right? And these need to be equally good players to what you're losing, ideally, or at least somewhere pretty close, because it is clear that as much as, I like Aiden Hazarkani and Zach Booth or whatever, RSL's attack relies on its top pieces in order to operate, and they will miss those guys a lot.
Yeah, if you're going to, as I always say, I don't love the model of developing awesome young players and then seeing them blossom elsewhere, but the soccer ecosystem, that's what it is. If you're going to sell Gozo for $20 million, you better turn around and sign somebody else.
Yep. And props to Gozo. Like, it's awesome that a West Valley kid is doing this, right? Is a prospect the level of, like, Atletico Madrid is interested and Aston Villa is interested. Like, that's so cool to have someone from our state be, potentially a U.S. men's national team player at the age of 19. It is awesome. It is. We should celebrate that kid, not be upset that he's leaving RSL.
Is Diego going to make the U.S. men's national team?
I think so.
All right.
I mean, I think he works hard enough. He fits him. Poch loves him. I think
does.
he makes it.
By the way, is Tottenham going to get relegated?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's extremely bad,
That's
dude.
so embarrassing. I don't even have a full frame of reference for what that means, but
I think it's more likely than not that they stay up come next Sunday. They have, they need 1 point basically. But goodness that it's this close is quite embarrassing for us Spurs fans.
it is. All right, man. Let's play a little golf soon, okay?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Our buddy Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune stops by today courtesy of our friends at Advanced Window Products. Now, it's not necessarily super hot right now. In fact, it's somewhat chilly, but we are high speed ahead to hot weather. If your house is warm in the summer, even though you have the air conditioning on, if it's cold in the winter, even though you have the heater on, number one, you are hemorrhaging money. Number two, it is because of your windows. So take advantage of the spring window special right now where you save $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. Now, the new thing is if you don't need 10 windows, discounts can be prorated for fewer than 10 windows. This is Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City, Utah football legend, his buddy Jake Weber. They've been doing this for 40 years. Family owned since 1986. Take advantage of the offer. Go to advancedwindows.com or dial 801-850-9100 right now. That's 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100. Our good friends at Advanced Window Products. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Patrick Overhout's going to join us coming up in studio next. He's a former Major League Baseball player that has started a really cool thing, helping a bunch of people in our community struggling with mental health and addiction. We're going to tell you about that. Pablo Mastroeni later on. Then it's Tim McMahon. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6 right here on ESPN 700. All right, welcome on in. 3 o'clock hour of the program starts right now. We are going to bring in Pablo Mastroeni to talk a little RSL later on. Tim McMahon joins us coming up in just a little bit. But a very special guest live in studio, former Major League Baseball player, Brighton High School legend, and a good friend, Patrick Overholt, on a Wednesday. What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, man, Spence, doing really good today. Thanks for having me on. This is a great opportunity, and love the show, so doing well today.
I appreciate you, and obviously a lot of love for you and your family, and somehow my friend Jason convinced your sister Kate to marry him, so we've been able to get to know you guys a little bit. And obviously your brother and your dad, it's been fun to kind of get to know you guys through that relationship, and we're going to talk about Good Time Golf today. We're going to talk about the recipe today. Patrick has a couple of really cool things that he has started in our community to help people that are struggling with addiction, which is a very real thing. As I always say, I'm very grateful now that in this generation, mental health is health, period, because you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth, and you're a little bit younger than I am. But growing up, man, there really wasn't an outlet for men who felt like they needed to be men, right, to talk about the way they're feeling, and that leads to behavioral patterns that you're escaping left and right. And so I want to get into your story a little bit and kind of what has brought you to this place. Now you're about to celebrate a couple of years of sobriety, which is great. You were a high-level baseball player. You were a pitcher, right? So let's start there, as far as baseball as an outlet and how that kind of became your identity a little bit. And then we'll get into what happened when your career was over. Tell me about your baseball career arc. Let's start there.
Sounds good to me. So growing up here in this beautiful state of Utah, very blessed to play all the sports, baseball, basketball, football, back when you could, play them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, baseball from a young age was always kind of the one for me. Could always throw a baseball pretty hard, and that brought on the next opportunities, taking it to college. I went to Santa Clara University for 3 years there and had some success early on. I was a freshman All-American, and so immediately I went from being kind of a high school kid from Utah to having some success. And what I like to say was I had a big ego and a low self-esteem, which carried on kind of throughout my life, but played in college for a couple of years, got drafted by the Phillies 2005, and from there, it was an amazing experience, right? Got to go through all the levels of the minor leagues, progressed pretty quickly, got to Double-A within a few years, and before that, my last year of college, I blew out my elbow, had that Tommy John surgery.
Okay,
and, so for me, I didn't know if baseball was after that, if this was going to be a thing. You go through something like that, pretty life-changing, and not sure exactly, am I going to get through this? This was earlier on when the success rates weren't quite as good with Tommy John. Now it's, they have so many amazing doctors, and it's pretty successful if you follow the aftercare program. But, I got back and got through that. And, I was introduced to opiates and painkillers, with that surgery, and always kind of noticed that I took them at a different level than the normal people, and how it's prescribed. Yep. And so I always kind of had that in the back of my head. And with baseball and that whole culture, there was a lot of drinking, the long bus rides after every game. So it didn't take off for me until years later, but it was always kind of there. But yeah, I had an amazing experience with the Phillies. I was with them when they won the World Series, 2008. I was a Double-A and got to know a lot of those guys. Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Roy Halladay, who passed away years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Some amazing people. But yeah, being able to kind of rub shoulders with some of those guys and get to that level, I think, again, it was like big ego, low self-esteem. Yeah. It wasn't, like you mentioned earlier, mental health wasn't really a priority back then. And you just kind of put your head down and do the work and get through hard things. Yeah. And that's just kind of how I always did it. And going into my last year with the Phillies, I had my oldest daughter was born in Florida at the very end of spring training. And I was released the day after she was born. So I kind of got my walking papers, and I had this brand new baby girl, and headed back to Utah, but thinking I would have some success getting picked up. But what you don't realize when you're in that situation is there's 32 other clubs, that are doing the same thing, releasing 50 guys.
Right, yeah.
Went and played independent ball, which is professional baseball, but kind of at a different level. You get paid a little more. You're playing against a lot of guys that played AA, AAA, big leagues, and things like that. And it was a lot more accountability. You're doing it for a paycheck and to support your family, and the drug testing wasn't really stringent, and that's kind of when things progressed for me. So 2 years of that, and then I decided it was time to kind of go support the family, get a real job, and I was okay with that. I was okay with that at the time, but you talked about identity and that being the thing. I was always a baseball player, and after that, I think so many athletes today struggle with that. I think we talk about Tiger, what he's going through, and I just think that what I've learned over the past 10, 15 years is that addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you do for a living, what family you come from. It affects everyone, which is kind of what we've gotten into today. It's so in 2013 we started Good Time Golf, which is it's a sober golf league, an aftercare program for people out of treatment, out of jail. Kind of the next step, right after you get that first initial help.
Yeah.
And it's been extremely powerful. We started with 4 guys, and actually just came from, we play every Wednesday, just came from it today, and we had over 30 guys out today.
Oh, nice.
And a couple females in there. We're working on that, getting those same opportunities available to women. But yeah, right now it's mostly men, and it's just been it's been amazing to see it grow and see so many young people who have struggled with some of the similar things. You talk about mental health. And see them grow and start to change.
Where can people go find more information about Good Time Golf?
Yes, thank you for asking. So we have a website, www.goodtimegolf.org. We're on Instagram at GoodTimeGolfUtah. And then real quick, our mission statement is just to provide a safe and sober environment for those recovering from substance abuse and mental health issues, to connect, golf, and grow together. And our motto is living in golf and recovery, one day, one swing at a time.
I love it. All right, goodtimegolf.org is where you go for more information there. And, there's something so powerful simply about community, right? And a lot of people that struggle with addiction of any kind. And addiction, it's such a sneaky bastard. You know what I mean? Because it manifests in so many different ways. It could be drugs and alcohol. It could be food. It could be your phone. It could be gambling. It could be several different things. Now, the most obvious ones are when people are suffering through alcohol and drug addiction, but it's so sneaky in so many different ways. But if you break your leg, people see that you have a cast, right? But if you're struggling to get through the day and you're coping by using drugs and alcohol, people don't necessarily see it right away and might think that you're doing okay. And when you find a community like you've built at Good Time Golf, I think the real magic happens when you realize that there are other people fighting the same battles you are. You know what I mean? Because if you've made some mistakes, and I certainly have, there's a tendency to isolate, right? And feel like I'm the only one in the world that's ever done this. I'm the only one in the world that's ever made this decision, or I'm the only one in the world that's cost myself relationships and opportunities because I couldn't get my head screwed on straight. And then you find other people that simply have done the same thing. And that's where kind of the community magic starts to happen, when you realize that you can heal together by being vulnerable and talking about the things that you've been through. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you're speaking my love language, Spence. I mean, the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And we find ourselves alone and isolated and miserable, and we think that we're unique. They call it terminal uniqueness, and that gets us into an even more isolated and lonely place. Right? And so, yeah, we have so many amazing things out there. You know, Good Time Golf is just one of them. There's sober softball. There's all kinds of different stuff. But yeah, what you talked about, how can we get through this thing together, right? Once we become vulnerable, especially men, it's hard for us men to talk about how we feel and what we're struggling with.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if there's one thing I can do today, it's to maybe reach that one person who doesn't know that we're out there, doesn't know that there's a whole community out there, you know, ready and willing to help whatever we can.
Yeah, a place where you don't feel judged.
Exactly.
A place where you can be yourself and all of yourself, right? Because I do think another layer of, you know, the mental health issue, because look, addiction is part of mental health. You know, your body is telling you need something that, or excuse me, your mind is telling you that you need something that your body is allergic to, right? And you can't make that disconnect. Your mind's telling you you need it, and in reality, you really don't, you know? And when you realize that, you can kind of move into a space of better living and all the things that come with that. But your mind is telling you that you have to have something that your body is literally allergic to. So essentially, addiction of all forms, it's a symptom of something that's wrong inside, right? It's a symptom of something that's wrong in your mind. It is literally a mental health symptom. And I think the more and more people that are willing to talk about it openly will help people that are in the shadows come out into the light, because there is this guilt and shame cycle you go through, which leads to isolation. And then you feel like, well, I don't want to go, you know, around a circle of people that are going to judge me for what I've done before. But I really think, and look, you know, a lot of people find long-term recovery and sobriety in AA. And as you know, the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous is not simply just the meetings, it's sharing it with somebody else. That's the secret sauce, right? So kind of what you're creating with this golf league, in a way, is that type of like group setting where I would imagine throughout the course of golfing with people that have been through the same thing you have, there are conversations that happen on the golf course that hopefully lead to healing, get you out of this shame cycle and simply stop isolating and come have a good time with us, right?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's our motto. Come have a good time with us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not out there for 4 hours talking the big book and AA.
Yeah.
But there are many times where we're out there, you know, just kind of talking and, hey, what's going on in your life? You know, what, how you doing? What are you struggling with?
Mm-hmm.
And just sharing that with another person, you know, the power of that. And it's the opposite of being alone and full of that shame, full of that fear, full of that regret. So I think the more of us that are out there willing to share our stories, that's where the power comes from, because it hopefully brings that person out of the shadows and into the sunlight, just like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many amazing opportunities, so many amazing platforms, you know, podcasts, things like that, just to kind of hear a message throughout the day. I just know that I've been in and out of this deal for 13 years. I'm coming back up on 2 years. And, you know, knowing what I know now, it is how powerful that connection is. It doesn't matter if you struggle with drugs and alcohol, if it's food, if it's shopping, if it's your phone, just to know that there's other people out there kind of going through similar stuff. I think that's when we start to heal.
When did you, I'm curious as to when you decided you wanted to be open about what you're going through and what that process was like for you. You know, it was always interesting for me because, you know, AA is Alcoholics Anonymous. When you're a public figure and your mistake is on the front page of the paper, I can remember going home and watching the news the night, you know, stuff happened with me, and I was the lead story on the news, and I'm like, so my anonymity was ripped from me. I really had no choice but to confront it and face it in a public front-facing way because it was out there. You know what I mean? And so, but it still took a little bit for me in a public space into a microphone to be willing to talk about the things that ultimately led me into a really dark place. But, you know, the magic of it, Pat, is once I did, I started getting emails and direct messages on social media like, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being willing to talk about how hard this was for you. Thank you for being willing to talk about your journey and your path back to being a healthy, loving father and someone who can excel in a career. I had to rebuild it. I mean, I was off air for a couple of years, wasn't sure if I'd ever get back on. And once I got this opportunity, I'm like, I'm taking it by the throat and I'm never letting it go. And we're coming up on 8 years for the show in August. And I'm really proud because when we got the show back on air, I heard from a lot of people that are going to hate me no matter what. Like, although it'll last a year and then you're going to screw it up again. No, I'm not. Like I'm going to build this thing up and we're going to make it great. And I'm very proud of it. We're the highest rated show on the market and will continue to be because of the work I put in. But the messages you get, like I'll do a segment on the Jazz draft and no one's sending me direct messages like, hey, thanks for your breakdown on Darren Peterson. And then I'll take 5 minutes to say, hey, if you're struggling right now, if you're in a dark place and you don't feel like you can get out, I promise that you can. The old saying, like, if you're going through hell, what do? You keep going, right? So there's power in that. And people listen to it and they appreciate it because, as my mom says, if you treat everybody like they're going through something really hard, you're going to be right about 80% of the time, right? What was the process you went through to decide, like, I'm done hiding this. I am done with the shame cycle. I am going to talk to people about this. I'm going to be front facing with my story. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, man, that gave me the chills, talking about being 8 years back on. And you have a huge following, Spence, and I think you're, a big instrumental part of this community.
I appreciate that.
A lot
Thank
of people
you.
look up to you. But yeah, mine was very similar to you. It was a professional baseball player, and I was kind of always known for that. And then next thing you know, it was like DUI1, DUI2, and you end up. What they say is you end up with people you don't want to be with in places you don't want to be if you ride this thing into the ground, which is what I did. We lost our mom at a relatively young age, and she was that person for our family, that instilled all the values and all the things. And
not to interrupt, but you lost your mom around the time you stopped playing ball, right?
Yeah.
So that was, yeah.
4 months later.
Yeah.
So I threw my last pitch summer of 2011, and she passed December of 2011.
Yeah.
And so it was like going from an amazing place. I've lived this dream. I've been so fortunate to be able to do this to how could you take this person, and I know so many people go through similar stories. I've heard people have helped me so long, so many times in my journey of getting through hard things. And that made me realize eventually that, the only way out is through. And it's taken me a lot of falling on my face to figure that out. But they call there's a program out there called Recover Out Loud, where I understand the anonymity of aspect of everything, and that's part of it. And I honor that and respect that. But for me, it was similar to you. I didn't really have a choice. It was either face this and recover, or I can keep trying to run. And what they say is it's jails, institutions, and death, right? Unfortunately, we see it in our community all the time. I don't know the exact statistics, but fentanyl is killing over 350 people. I don't know if it's per day or.
Well, the CBS News report, this is about 3 years old, is that now we have surpassed, there are more people that pass from addiction every year than the Vietnam War. That was about 3 years ago. And we passed that about 3 years ago. So, yeah, I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but it is a prescient, urgent issue in our country that oftentimes is ignored because most people are scared to talk about it. And the reason people are scared to talk about it is because of the way they're treated. They're judged, right? And there's this weird thing kind of in our state where we have this culture that is supposed to be loving and religious and caring of other people. And the very essence of Christian teaching is forgiveness. And yet there are so many people that look down on others if they're not living the life they believe they should be living, yet they have their mistakes. They're just in the closet, right? So that's where the anonymity is supposed to come in. And the reason it is kind of steeped into this entire thing is the way others view people that have been through things. All pain is bad, even the pain of the wrongdoer, right? Because that's where the guilt and the shame comes in. So I think people that have been through things like you and I have been through, like when I hear about somebody who's not in a good place as a result of decisions they've made, certainly, but also the way this thing grabs you, the way addiction grabs you, and suddenly you want so badly to stop, but you can't. When I hear people that are going through that, it breaks my heart. It gives you empathy. Like when you go through hard things like this, you can look around at others in your circle or in the community, and you just want to help them get better. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. You know, I remember the first time I was in treatment, the speaker came in and he told me about the rule of, you know, thirds. A third of you are going to make it and find long-term success in sobriety and recovery. A third of you are going to stay in this limbo and probably have a premature death. And a third of you are going to die. And that was something, I don't even know if those stats are realistic today. I would say it's even less than that on those who find long-term recovery. But yeah, that just, for me, you know, and what you talked about, not being able to talk about it and feeling judged, it wasn't until I kind of let go of all of that and realized no matter who you are, someone's always going through something. You know, you kind of mentioned it earlier, and whether you're in addiction, out of addiction, if you have a family member, you know, because addiction affects everyone. It affects the person, but it affects the family, you know, and it wasn't until I kind of saw the damage it was doing to the people I love most, you know, and wanting that in my heart more than anything to not hurt them anymore. So what that did is it kind of inspired me to just start doing the deal one day at a time. That's what they say, you know, 124 hours at a time. And that allowed me to not get too far ahead of myself and worry about the future. And slowly but surely started connecting with some amazing people. And, you know, our goal today is just to reach as many people as we can you know, that are suffering with this deal.
Yeah, the one day at a time thing, you know, oftentimes when you're in the thralls of it, when you're in the thick of it, it's like, I just got to get through the next 10 minutes, you know,
Exactly.
let alone the next, like, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other. I'm going to do the next right thing. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to eat something that's good for me. I'm going to hydrate. And then I'll figure out what's, you know, after that. Because when you're in the thralls of this, the idea of long-term sobriety feels like it's impossible. You know what I mean? And that's why they just say stack days one day at a time. So the up-to-date numbers on this, okay, as far as lives lost to drug overdoses, alcohol, etc., globally, it is estimated that 2.6 million people die annually as a result of alcohol. Now, when it comes to the United States, we peaked during COVID, right, as far as overdoses, over 100,000 people. Last year, 71,500 people passed last year as a result of overdoses. Opioids factor in 70% of the overdose deaths. And then the CDC estimates that excessive alcohol use is responsible for more than 140,000 deaths in the U.S. annually. And obviously, those are the ultimate tragedies. But that doesn't even talk about job loss. That doesn't talk about divorce. It doesn't talk about relationships frayed. It doesn't talk about losing the respect of your peers or losing friendships, right? Or losing your home or economic hardships. You know, so the deaths certainly are the thing that is the most tragic. It doesn't talk about time spent in jail. It doesn't talk about time spent away from your kids and then the effect it has on your kids. And then living wondering whether or not, like Mel Gibson says in The Patriot, my biggest fear is my past sins will come back to haunt my children, right? So the deaths are one thing, but the psychological toll and the day-to-day detrimental effect that it has on you, I don't think that can be calculated. I don't even know how you would put a number on that. You know what I mean? Like a lot of hard levels to this stuff, aren't there?
Yeah, so many levels. You know, it just, like we said, it hits everyone. And those are the things, that, at least for me, speaking for myself, you know, those are the things I don't think about in my addiction. All the relationships, all the things, the people we hurt, the things we lose. You know, I'm a girl dad and I have 3 amazing daughters.
Yeah.
You know, and what keeps me going today is what are we passing on to that next generation, right? What are we doing to move the needle in the right direction? And sometimes it's just being an example. Sometimes it's just being a good person.
Yeah.
You know, like doing the small things. But yeah, those numbers are very cunning, baffling, and powerful to hear.
How are your daughters doing? Are they doing well? They're proud of dad?
You know, they're doing great. They always get emotional talking about them, but I have 3 cheerleaders, tumblers, dancers,
Nice.
You know, honor roll at school, and they're doing really well.
Good,
So,
good.
Yep.
What would you say if there's somebody listening right now, if there's somebody in their car and they're in a spot where they want to stop drinking, they can't. They want to stop smoking, they can't. They want to stop taking the pills, they can't. They want to stop smoking weed, they can't. They want to stop whatever their thing is. And they just, because it's interesting what you find. Like if you talk to a smoker, he hates cigarettes, right? If you talk to someone who's captured by booze, he hates it. He or she hates it. There's not like this love affair with your drug of choice, but it has grasped you and it will not let you go. What would you say to somebody who's listening right now who's in that spot?
That's a powerful question, because I've been in that situation with a lot of the things you just mentioned. And I would say, that there's so much help out there. There's so much hope. Never give up on yourself, especially, and to reach out. There's so many people out there willing and waiting to help, whether it's another fellow person in one of the fellowships, one of the programs, therapists, doctors, just people in your community, in your church maybe. But that the only way out is through. And then, we start healing once we get completely honest. Just that there's so much hope out there.
Yeah. You just hit something on the head that might be, in my opinion, the biggest key to this whole thing. And that is, addicts can be very cunning and very deceitful and very dishonest. Okay, so maybe you're lying to your friends, maybe you're lying to your family. Never lie to yourself, right? Like maybe you don't want to admit where you're at to your friends because maybe they'll judge you, maybe they'll get mad at you. You don't want to admit where you're at to your wife because maybe that's a fight and she's going to throw you out, so you're just going to lie and avoid the whole thing. You're embarrassed to tell your parents where you're at or whatever. If you really want to get well, just don't lie to yourself, right? Like unbelievable self-honesty and constant inventory. Where am I at? Can I actually pull this off, right? That to me is the secret sauce, because it's understandable in a way if you're in a really bad spot. Like, are you afraid of losing your job if you tell your employer where you're at? I do think there's been progress made. A lot of business owners or head of companies, like if you're honest with your employer, I think a lot of bosses these days are like, yeah, let's get you somewhere for 20 days. Your job's fine. Let's help you figure something out. But there's still this fear of being judged, even if that's the case, coming back to work. Oh, there's the dude in rehab. He's back, So, but if you want to get well, self-honesty. Yeah. Do not lie to yourself. Right. What are your thoughts?
Yep. Self-honesty. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Where am I at today? If I can look myself in the eyes in the mirror and like the answer to that question, then I'm probably doing okay. If I can't look myself in the eyes today, then I'm just here to say there's so many avenues, there's so many ways, so many people out there that are willing to help. And for me, just my own story, it was I had to be honest with where I was at. I've been in all those situations, and there's just amazing people out there that can help.
And a lot of different options, because I do think, and I want to be careful here, I've seen AA save lives, 100%. I've seen Alcoholics Anonymous turn lives around and save people's lives. I am not diminishing the 12 steps. I'm not diminishing that community. But there are some people that it doesn't work for, right? So I would say find what works for you, because recovery, a couple of different things. First of all, it's lifelong, right? And, the whole saying like relapse is part of recovery, I don't love, but it kind of is, right? For a lot of people, and it's okay. I do think sometimes the old timer approach in AA, I've got 47 years, and let's say you have one or two and suddenly you trip up and you're like, well, I guess I'm never getting my 30-year chip. And so, you know what I mean? It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. And it can be a little bit daunting if you don't just embrace the fact like this is going to be a lifelong deal. And sometimes I'm doing really well. And the addiction as a disease model, I know that's a little bit controversial, but if you utilize that in your mind as far as what remission means, right? If your cancer is in remission, if you have a handle on your diabetes because you're doing the thing every day and you're taking the insulin and you're measuring, move in the right direction, and then at times admit and acknowledge sometimes you're moving in the wrong direction. But if you are, just catch it, right? And then just get back one step at a time. So it brings me back to the original point. If you've tried AA and the rooms aren't for you, you can't find your spot there. For instance, Good Time Golf, goodtimegolf.org. That's another option. I feel like now the understanding of how hard this thing is on individuals, communities, and families have bred very smart people to come up with different solutions. If AA is not your thing, there are other things out there, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many different ways to recover. I think all the programs that end in A do amazing things, and they help a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's so many other options out there, you know, especially us at Good Time Golf. We're not going to judge or say one thing or another. We might tell you our own experience and what helped us the most. But we have a number of guys who AA is not their deal. It hasn't worked for them. And just connecting with people, you know, that's a huge part of it. And like you said, you know, if a cancer patient needs to, you know, go take their treatment, we as the alcoholic addict need to do the same thing. And for me, that is, you know, starts in the morning with a certain meeting here or there, but it's mostly about, you know, that quiet time, that meditation, that, you know, please help me, talking to whatever higher source it is, you know, greater universe, whatever it is, and just getting outside of me, getting outside of this, they call it stinking thinking, lots of different terms for it, but yeah, I totally agree. You know, AA is not going to be the way for everyone. There were certainly times where I didn't believe it was for me, but the great thing about it is it's an individual program. Like I can take the bits and pieces of that's worked for me, and I could take that with me.
Yeah.
And the other stuff, I can just leave it at the door.
Yeah.
You know,
I wonder what in your process, I wonder what the most challenging realization was for you, because a couple things and because you used a term earlier, big ego, low self-esteem, right? And I can remember hearing a speaker, and I actually think this is really powerful and important. He said the biggest key here that he's found, and again, addiction in a way is like a golf swing. It's different for everybody. I can watch you, and I've seen your golf swing. You hit it way too far. It's embarrassing. I can watch your golf swing and be like, I wish I could hit it like Pat, but I can't. I hit it like Spence. Addiction in a way is like a golf swing. It's different for everybody. It's unique for everybody, and you can't copy somebody. You got to find your own. And I can remember hearing the speaker, again, just keep in mind, high ego, low self-esteem. And I remember he said, the secret to long-term recovery is intimacy. And I went, okay, so he means like with a partner, a wife, a girlfriend. And he said, but it's self-intimacy. I had never heard it put like that. So think about how you feel about your daughters. I have a son. Would you want your daughters to exhibit the same behavior you did? Would you want your daughters to put the same substances in their body that you're putting in yours? The answer is obviously no. So if you can crystallize that vision for your own self and become intimate with your own self, then you can start to understand maybe a way you can get out of this thing. If you picture it with your children or your wife or your best friend who you do anything for, that was hard for me to ingest, because like you, high ego, low self-esteem, and it's like it's a tough thing to deal with. And then the other thing was the spiritual piece, which I think is hard for a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is it's as important as anything else. And the way it's put, right, in the 12 steps or Alcoholics Anonymous is a higher power of your understanding. And I think that has to be underscored, because there's so many people that maybe have been scarred by religious experiences where they felt ostracized or the religion wasn't for them and people in their community threw them aside. So they don't want to even say the word God. They don't even want to say it, right? And so whether it's universe, nature, higher power, but the fact of the matter is you got to find something. That's part of this formula, right? I wonder what was the most challenging part of the process that has led you to the space of being well.
Oh, that was good stuff, Spence. You know, yeah. So for me, you know, I was raised in the Catholic Church, and amazing experiences. Where things turned for me is, you know, when I lost my mom at a young age, and I didn't want to hear that word God. I didn't want to talk about that, and I went the other way for a number of years, and I had to get honest with myself. Okay, how did that work out for you? And for me, it was DUIs, jails, treatment centers, institutions, and yeah, working my way back towards that. When I heard that, you have to have a higher power of your understanding, and that changed everything for me. It wasn't this all judging God. It was parts of all the things you just mentioned, the universe, nature. That's why Good Time Golf's such an amazing deal for us. We're outside with people we love and care about, and we're doing it in nature. And, but to answer your question, that's been the biggest piece, the spirituality piece. It's for me, it's giving it all up in the morning. Hey, I don't got this. I'm going to need some help. Please, guide me, whatever it is, these little talks that we have throughout the day. And then just doing that as part of my routine, religiously, started to slowly but surely get a little bit better here and there, and watch it work in other people's lives,
Yeah, well said. All right, Patrick Overholt is in studio, former Major League Baseball player. He has started a sober golf league called Good Time Golf. Go to goodtimegolf.org for more information. It's a sober community of people in recovery. Get outside, move your body, things that are helpful when you're trying to make your way into a better space. We'll catch a break. And coming up next, Patrick has also started, we'll have a little fun coming up on the other side. Hopefully that wasn't too heavy for our listeners. If you tuned in, we appreciate it. Hopefully it landed with somebody. But we'll do one more segment with Pat coming up. I want to tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores. There's nothing like taking in a game on a sunny afternoon. You can get your field ready this summer with IFA's 4+ lawn care program. It's a blend especially formulated for Utah soils. Get healthy, lush, dark green grass this summer by making your power move today at IFA. One more segment with Pat coming up. We're going to bring in Pablo Mastroianni. Then we have Tim McMahon. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We'll say goodnight at 6 right here on ESPN 700. All right, the website is goodtimegolf.org. If you're looking for a community of sober people where you can get outside, move your body, have a little fun, and play a little golf, check that out, goodtimegolf.org for more information. Patrick Overholt is in studio, former Major League Baseball player. He has started and created goodtimegolf.org. But, Patrick, you have done a smart thing because us radio hosts love free gear. Okay, so you brought me some free gear. So let's talk about the recipe, okay? What I want the origin story. When did you first come up with this idea, and where are we at with it now?
Yeah, so actually it was my good friend, Tony Pageant, our founder, came up with this and asked me to jump aboard, a few months into it. And it's been amazing. The recipe is, to just give you a brief rundown. It's what is your recipe for success, on and off the golf course. And if you don't mind, I'll just kind of read it.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
The recipe is to inspire golfers and non-golfers to express their individuality on and off the course through apparel and storytelling that blends golf, lifestyle, and mindset. The recipe was born out of two journeys taking place simultaneously. The first was in our own lives. We were navigating life in a way that left us lost, hopeless, and lacking identity. We reached a point where we reached a fork in the road and had to make some decisions to change. That change brought an exploration of all things. We learned to find values, behaviors, beliefs that catapulted us into the life we had always hoped to live. The areas became the ingredients of our recipe. The second journey came through our love for the game of golf, always seeking how to become better. We studied others. We've been able to study from those who came before us to continue to grow our recipe in the game of golf. Whether in life or golf, the recipe we use grows, changes, and adapts. This makes the recipe a journey, not an event. We want to share this journey with others because it's not specific to just our lives. We also want to explore others' recipes to show that life or golf is not one size fits all. We do this through expression in apparel, social media, and eventually a broader media side to promote the storytelling of others. And that's who we are. It's what is your recipe for success? And it doesn't even have to deal with golf. But for us, it's been a really fun way to express our individuality through apparel and different things. We're a local golf company, just up and coming. And it's been a lot of fun.
It's good looking gear too. Tell people where they can go check it out. More information on the recipe.
Yeah, so we're on the web, www.therecipegolf.com, and on Instagram at @therecipe_golf. And we'll be at the Utah Golf Convention, the Utah Golf Show in July. So we're going to showcase some of our stuff there.
Awesome. So you brought us Porter. I think Porter might have been. So did you brought Porter some stuff as well? I might just take all of it. Are you sure that you want any of this stuff? You want any of this recipe gear?
Yeah, I'm in.
It's good. It's good looking. So tell me what you brought us today.
Yeah, so today just brought you a couple of our new polos, and all the polos and different things have names. A couple of the hats. We got the bump and run, and I'll have to show you. But in my opinion, it's really good looking stuff. And where we compete is price wise. A lot of those bigger brands, Travis Matthews and the places that make some amazing stuff, maybe out of some of our price range, and we're trying to take care of the locals. So if you go to our website today, therecipegolf.com, use the promo code GTG for Good Time Golf. I believe that gets you 25% off. So
nice, 25% off. That's not nothing. So hit me with that offer one more time, Pat.
Yeah, so if you go to goodtimegolf.org and the promo code is GTG.
GTG, 25% off, goodtimegolf.org, and then it is therecipegolf.com. Is that right?
Therecipegolf.com, yep.
All right, now, most important question, who hits it further, you or Sean?
Oh, man, we compete. I would say if we both go out there and get after one, he's probably got me by a couple yards. And real quick, it's my brother's birthday today.
It's Sean's birthday.
Happy birthday to Sean.
Happy birthday to Sean, and thank you so much to Sean for letting us knuckleheads use your spot in Cabo a few weeks ago. That place rules, by the way. That was fun, man.
No better place in the world. It's paradise down there.
And by the way, Kate's creeping up on you. Kate's going to start beating you here. Kate's a stick. She's a good player.
I played with Kate on Sunday, and God bless her, 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
She was hitting the ball, plenty far and chipping and putting. So, yeah, she's probably going to be beating me here in a couple of years. But what an awesome example for, my three daughters, Sean's three daughters, to have their aunt out there, always with such a great attitude and an outlook on life, and Jason as well.
No, Jason sucks. Let's be clear. But Jason's my buddy. I have no idea how he pulled out. Kate, Kate has been such a great addition to our lives because obviously I kid, I love Jay like a brother, and I love your sister, man. I think she's awesome, and I'm proud of you. Hope you know that, okay?
Yep, right back at you. Proud of you, Spence.
Thanks for coming in. And if you need anything from me, you've got my number. We'll have you back on. But if you're having a tough day, dude, just hit me up. Let's go hit balls, okay?
Likewise. Look forward to it.
All right. Patrick Overholt, check out goodtimegolf.org. Go to therecipegolf.com. And yeah, great stuff. Doing great stuff for our community. Really proud of that kid, man. Former Major League Baseball player. If you are struggling, okay, reach out and check out this community at goodtimegolf.org. Now, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. That is a new client on the program today. And look, bottom line is if you're looking to get back in shape, there are a bunch of products available that can just help as you age a little bit. So a couple of years ago, I set a goal, wanted to get in the best shape of my life, started cleaning up some habits, started eating clean, started hitting the gym, doing yoga. And within a couple of months, I was just a little bit frustrated with lack of progress. And I had a friend ask me if I had ever supplemented testosterone before, which I had not. So he recommended Game Day Men's Health, and I went in there. And honestly, after utilizing some testosterone and some peptides, within a couple of months, I was in the best shape of my life. And 2 years later, I'm still in that shape because they actually follow up every couple of months with some blood work. Now, the good news is they're giving you the very same offer they're giving me, which is a free consultation with no obligation. So take advantage of that at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. But here's the kicker. If you mention you heard me talking about it on the show, they're giving you 50% off of your membership all year. If you need to lose a lot of weight, they've got the Trizipatide, the Ozempic, or all the tides that you need to lose weight. But they're going to take you through a consultation, recommend some things based off your levels. And if you want to get back in shape, I can just tell you it worked for me. And they're really great people at Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Pablo Mastroianni joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. One more game for RSL before the World Cup break is upon us, and we'll say goodbye to MLS for about 2 months. But things are good, man. It's an excellent start to the season. Real Salt Lake was able to take care of Colorado over the weekend, 8-4-1 now, third in the West, 25 points, 1 point ahead of Seattle, 4 points behind San Jose, but with a game in hand. Minnesota is the opponent coming up, and the head coach once again stops by, Pablo Mastroeni, on a Wednesday afternoon. Happy Wednesday, Pops. How are you, buddy?
Happy Wednesday, Spence. Doing well, bud.
Appreciate the time today. So, obviously, we talked last week about the importance of the Rocky Mountain Cup. And, it felt for a minute that maybe like the Galaxy would be the rival because of MLS Cup, or maybe it was Seattle, but it's clearly Colorado. So tell me what you like most about that win, and how much sweeter was it for you as a former player and coach of the Rapids?
Yeah, I think it was a good performance. Obviously, we gave up a soft, corner kick, set piece goal, which has kind of been our Achilles heel to this point. But I really like the way we just settled in. We didn't get nervous, anxious, and abort the plan. We stayed the course. The guys, even though it was a really young group out there, the guys got the goal for halftime. And then just really turned the wheels in the second half. And then, after we got the second goal, I thought we managed the game real well. So a lot of what we've been talking about all year has been how do we manage games, the start of games, and how do we manage games with a lead. And I just felt like it was a complete performance after conceding a soft goal. So really proud of the group, especially, not having guys like Luna and Morgan in the game to start, and obviously not having Luna for the whole game. But, for me, it's a great sign when your best players aren't available, and yet your team can put forth a performance like we did to beat Colorado.
So I know the Diego injury is a sensitive thing. We are 1 week away from Mauricio Pochettino announcing his selections for the U.S. men's national team. And look, keep to yourself what you need to keep to yourself. Obviously, you know that. You've been doing this a long time. I wonder, when it comes to the news coming down that Diego was a bit compromised, what's the process that you need to go through with the dynamics in play to make sure you're doing right by the player, to make sure you're doing right with the club, but also communicating with the national team about, does this make sense, like how you have to go through this to make this decision to sit him over the weekend?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more black and white. So he had, we after, our game day -1, so a Friday right before the Colorado game, because he trained on Friday, felt a little bit of tightness in his hamstring. And so we were just precautious. The medical staff did a good thing by getting an MRI, and they saw that there was a little bit of fluid in his muscle. And so at that point, we just we decided that it wasn't best for him to play the game. For us, for him, for the national team, for anyone, it was just a medical decision. So we didn't do that. At that point, our medical staff was in touch with the U.S. national team's medical staff to keep them abreast of how he's doing. Since then, every day, every day of the last 5 days since our game, they've been in constant contact. And so he had a second scan yesterday, and it improved drastically. So he was taking some meds, he had something going on with his throat, so he was on meds, and they think that maybe that had a little bit to do with, taking some of the water out of the muscles. So he's training tomorrow, and so he's in a much better way. But at the same time, we want to make sure we do right by Diego in this moment and put him in the best situation to be a contender for the World Cup team. So it's still day to day. He's making great progress, and like I said, it's been a lot of contact between our medical staff and the national team staff to make sure that they're obviously have to make the best decision, because once you select the roster, there's only a couple changes I believe you can make. But want to put their best foot forward and make sure it wasn't an injury that was going to be 6 weeks long, which it's definitely not, because he'll be training full tomorrow.
Wonder what sort of, and maybe he just kind of stayed the course, but after Colorado was able to grab the first goal, you guys pummeled them. I mean, you scored 2 goals, but it was another one of those games where it felt like literally you could have scored 5 or 6. Did you see something that you needed adjusting after the start that kind of didn't go your way? Like, what do you most attribute that pretty stark turnaround to, Pablo?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because, again, the away team got the goal, and so naturally there's going to be a little bit of hesitancy to keep pressing the way they did. And then the onus is on us is to make sure we validate that it shouldn't press us. And so our execution with the ball was really good. We kept threatening the space behind them, and that's something that we've been talking about over the last 4 or 5 games. Really, against it started when we played LA. We're at our best when we can attack vertically over the defense, through the defense, along with between the lines, and being more diversified in the way we attacked. And I think that being a little bit more vertical when we conceded. Got Gozo behind the back line quite a few times, Serge behind the back line a few times, and it really started to create this momentum for us. And I think that was really the key. And like I said earlier, one of the biggest things that we've talked about is managing games. And so, if you concede, it's not just keeping the ball to keep it. It's how do we now change you to be a more aggressive team with the ball? And I think we did a good job of that. So. We go on learning from every game, Spence, and that's why it's always a quick mentality shift after good performance, bad performances, because there's always going to be things we need to work on. And the fact that we've been harping on this game management and not allowing our emotions to dictate what we should do, but just staying the course and understanding what the game is offering and what we're willing to take is really, really important.
So Sergi Solins, Serge as you call him, really continues to show this complete game. I mean, I don't think I really understood how fast he was. I mean, that's one of the things that, like, when he gets going. But, another incredible header, and we've seen him score goals in a number of different ways. We talk every week about your 2 young stars with Gozo, and of course we need to talk about Gozo again because he scored again. But tell me, when you first kind of started to get to know Sergi Solins, what stood out most to you? And then how would you articulate the way he's grown throughout the course of the first part of the season?
Well, I would say what stood out about Sergi when he came to train with us for probably 3 days last year before he went back to college. And the one thing was how good his understanding was about the game. And by that, I mean understanding how to press defensively and take options away and how you're trying to corral the group and the ball to a certain part of the field. That was instinctive. The other part was his instinctive movements, when we were in possession, how he pulls away from the fence to receive the ball, how he secures the ball. And then obviously the timing of his movements to get in behind defenses. And I think those are some of the hardest things to teach. Because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of reps. And when you're in the middle of the season, if you're spending too much time doing that, it's probably because you're not scoring a lot of goals as a group. And so what he's done is come in well equipped with a great high level soccer understanding. And then, like you rightly pointed, his technique is really, really good to hold the ball up, to play. His finishing is something that he'll continue to work on for the rest of his career, but it's at a really good standard. Especially with his head, as we've seen. He's got a knack of being in a good spot, and then really the force of his headers are really, really good, and the placement. The other part is his speed, and I agree with you where he's very unassuming from that perspective. But once he opens up those strides, I didn't know he was that fast, and he continues to impress. The game against Atlanta where Morgan plays him in behind the defense was my first. I was like, man, he might get caught here, and then he just kept breaking away. So I think with every game, he's gaining more confidence. And when you have all those tools in your locker, you become a very hard person to defend. If you can come short, secure the ball, protect it. If you can go long, get behind defenses, and extend the distance. Now defenders don't know how to play you, and that's what's also helped him out. So he's creating a great situation for himself. He continues to impress, and I think he's going to end the year with quite a few goals.
I don't know that we've talked much about Sanabria either on the show, Pablo, and another player that not a lot of us know very well because he's a new player. But he's another guy where I feel like every single game he provides dangerous service, even if there's not a goal scored on the other side, right? On the other side of the pass. But there was this time a goal scored off another great service he provided. Tell us a little bit more about him and how he's kind of acclimated to the system and what you're asking him to do.
Yeah, so, one of the things that, we wanted to definitely bring in another wing that was going to be dangerous in that final third. And the one thing about Juan Sanabria that a lot of people may not know is that he's a converted outside back / wing back from a winger, right? So in his early days, he was a winger that had a lot of tools. He can find passes. He's good cross to the ball. Has great ideas in that final third. And so this transition was really about, are you athletic enough, and do you have enough, defensive bite? And so the one thing with him is that he is an all-around player. He is, he's an 8 out of 10 in every aspect of the game. And in that final third, he's really been important for us to this point of the season. And there's an interesting thing for, fans to kind of look at as well, is because, Juan Sanabria and Sergi are really good, friends away from the game as well. And they formed a really good bond. And so whenever you have a guy that's in positions of distributing the ball and has that connection to a striker, good things happen. And this is now the second cross to Serge in the box where he's finished with a head. And, it seems a little bit like when Andres Gomez linked up with Chicho and that combination. So there's some really interesting relationships that are building. But, Juan Sanabria has all the tools in his bag to make plays in that final third, and very rarely gets beaten defensively. And so he's one of those players you put on the team sheet, and you don't even really look to his side because he's gonna lock that side down both offensively and defensively.
Now, of course, as I say every single week, I don't just want to say, hey, Gozo's awesome, go ahead. But, if he's going to keep scoring, if he's going to keep being dangerous, we have to keep talking about him. And now we're at 6 goals and 4 assists on the year, 10 goal contributions through 13 games, and he's not even 20 years old yet. And he's a guy that everybody's talking about as a potential late add to the U.S. men's national team. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but since he continues to play well, I got to ask you as the coach, what continues to impress you?
Yeah, what's impressed me this week in particular, the game against Dallas, he played as a wing back. And then because of rotations and making sure that we had enough legs to compete against Colorado, we moved him into the 10 position for the Houston game. And he scored 2 goals in that game. And then we kept him in the 10 for the Colorado game and obviously scored in that game. And then I got to thinking about last year, Spence, and I thought, man, last year he played in the 10 position for us, and every single game that he played in, he had probably 2 or 3 big chances that he either created for himself or his teammate helped create for him. And the biggest problem was he wasn't finishing them. And so we kept saying, well, as long as he's not finishing, he's helping the team from a defensive standpoint, and he's learning. And then Andres Gomez, where the first season, we had Andres Gomez. He wasn't scoring, but he was scoring in training every day, and you just knew that it was going to come at some point. And so the biggest thing for me this week with Gozo is his ability to go from a position that he's been playing for 10, 11 games as a wingback, convert back to a 10, and be more productive in this position in 2 games, right? So that's a big step in someone's tactical understanding to be able to have different responsibilities in both positions, but yet the output actually increase in this position. So, the young man he's going to be, he's going to be one of the best that's going to come out of MLS. I have no doubt about that. And the reason I say that is because from a physical perspective, he's world class. He's at the top of, the most sprints per game in Major League Soccer. And if you're that fast, you typically can't last 90 minutes because of the lactic acid buildup in the muscles don't allow you to. But his body is an anomaly where it clears enough lactic acid to where he can sprint and have high speed running for 90 minutes. And so when you put all of this together, it's only a matter of time before he's playing with the national team and competing in a World Cup. But I still I still think there's a chance that he gets taken because of what he's been able to do in the first 13 games of the season.
How when it comes to this potential sale that maybe he and his camp would like to see during this summer window, how involved are you in these conversations? And then what's the potential downside? And this is an area of the soccer ecosystem I just don't understand. I don't know enough about it. But I do feel like a lot of MLS players that are transferred or sent elsewhere, like it's not like he's going to play with an Atletico Madrid senior team right away or Aston Villa's senior team right away. I mean, is there a danger that they pay 20 mil for him and then suddenly he's moved to some smaller level where he's not getting minutes and won't develop? Like, wouldn't it be a little bit better for him to maybe stick around for a while? And yes, I'm being selfish, to continue to develop under you, because obviously we have proof of concept there.
Yeah, no, it's funny, Spence, because those have been my conversations with him, and just we've been real candid with each other about that. I think, again, this conversation I had with him was probably 2 months ago, and now obviously he's put a lot of numbers on the board. But my biggest thing is there's a lot of things that we do here at the club that is catered to the young player. Right. And when you talk about the big clubs overseas, there's nothing catered to the young player. It's only catered to the big time players, and it's about winning and losing. It's not about development. Right. And so I think there's a lot of things that get lost in these dreams, right, in this utopian situation that we all think about when guys go to Europe. But the truth is the majority of the younger kids that go abroad, they don't end up playing with the team that bottom. And they end up getting sent on loan, and what it ends up doing to a young man that hasn't had a lot of life experience, it just starts to wane on their confidence. And the reason why Gozo's playing at the level he is, because I think it has a large part to do with the environment that he's playing in, where he can make mistakes, and there's not a Champions League title on the line. There's not a relegation battle on the line, right? It's so conducive to continuing to progress with confidence and taking risks and making some bad decisions where you should have passed it instead of shot it. But that doesn't happen here because we want Gozo to be the best version of himself. And so everyone from ownership to the coaches to his own teammates understand that these things are going to happen. And the onus is on us is to continue as not just a staff, not just as a group, to help this young man along in a way that helps him help the team be the best that we can be. And so I think when a lot of people think about Europe, it's really misleading because I don't know what the stat is on that, but the majority of young guys that go abroad never end up playing for the club that bottom. They end up going on loan. And then you think about like Chelsea and these big clubs, they're battling for the Champions League. They don't have time to bring these young guys along and take losses along the way. They just don't. Coaches don't have that kind of time. Club supporters aren't patient, right? And so what they do is they lend them and loan them to other teams in other countries, second division or maybe a first division team in Belgium, and they'll just see how they do. But now you have a kid that thought he was going somewhere. Now he's going to a different country, doesn't know that language, struggles because he's not getting playing time because maybe the coach doesn't want him there. Maybe the sporting director brought him over, and so there's so many things that can go on that aren't conducive for the young man's growth. And so my conversation with Gozo was like, listen, put up 20 and 20, and I think you have the tools to start for a Premier League team. And, he's slowly but surely crafting his way up there. And I just think that's a more realistic, that would be more realistic to go there and actually participate with the first team than going over there and having maybe 10 goals and 5 assists and you're still 19. Where I think that would lend itself to more of a loan situation, but you never know. So I think what we want to do as a club is make sure that we have everyone's best interest and that we're very transparent with what we think is best for the player. And at the end of the day, it's going to be between front office ownership and Gozo's camp as to what the best decision is for everyone.
I'm quite sure in your free time you're not intently studying MLS historical statistic situations, but you said 20 and 20. First of all, that would be awesome. How many 20 and 20 seasons has this league ever seen? Is it consistent? How many times has that happened? Any idea?
Well, no, but Spence, that's the whole thing is like it's so hard to achieve. But I'll say to Gozo, listen, if you can get 2020, go.
Yeah.
If you get 2019, stay here because we'd love to have you.
So here's the deal. Final game of the season, he's on 20 and 19, and suddenly you just have to bench him, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a smart man. Spence.
Okay, there we go. Let me paint a let me paint a scenario. Let's say 20 million comes in. Okay, Aston Villa or Atletico Madrid or whatever it is. A $20 million fee comes in. The club just has to say yes. He goes over wherever he goes, and he ends up having a really, really good stint with that team. What can that do for the story you guys can tell other young players that want to come up through the academy?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic story. But again, just being realistic, I think these players are once in a generation. They're not, first, like I said, the thing Gozo has world class right now is genetics, which is his ability to sprint for 90 minutes, which is an anomaly anywhere. And that aspect of his game, Spence, is easily Premier League quality, easily, hands down, probably top 10 in the Premier League. What Gozo's doing now at 19 from a physical output perspective. So, that's what makes this whole thing very. He's kind of like a unicorn. Now, as far as like the technical aspect, he'll get better. The finishing, he'll get better. All tactical understanding, he'll get better. But rare is it that anyone in any academy in MLS has a world-class attribute at 19. I don't know if I'm making sense, but so it is a great story. It'd just be unrealistic to think that another Gozo is going to come within the next 2 or 3 years, and we're going to sell them for $20 million to Europe again. Those are rare. It doesn't happen a lot in this league, So I think that I'd be cautious to say that. It's a great story to tell, and I guess the story to tell is there's Aiden Herzakani, there's Zach Booth that was in our academy. There's a lot of guys, Jay Glad, who have carved out amazing careers coming through our academy. And the one thing that we could sell is that we are a development club. And this is the story I told Sergi when he was hesitant about coming to our club. And I said, Serge, I want you to just go back and see how many minutes young players played last year, under 23. And I said, other clubs can sell you on, hey, we're going to play young players. The proof is in the pudding here. So it's not like I'm lying to you. I don't even want to say anything. Just go look at the numbers of minutes that the young guys have played. And so that's really the story. I think it's the holistic perspective of our club that creates a wonderful environment for any young player to flourish. And then everyone has their journey. Is he going to be a college player and then become a lawyer? Is he going to be a college player that comes back and plays pro? Is he going to go from the academy to the first team and then go to the national team and then go to Europe? And so I wouldn't say it's a one-size-fits-all. But what we do have for everyone is an environment that is, I think, second to none in this league.
All right, before I set you loose, you have a chance to head into the break with a lot of momentum, but what stands in your way is a tough Minnesota team on the road. Let's see, 17 goals scored, 21 allowed, 6-5-3, 2-2-2 at home. So it's an early kick, 2:30 on Saturday, Pablo. Tell me about Minnesota. What are you up against, and how important is it to send these players to the World Cup break with momentum?
Yeah, no, I think it's, like I say, after, when we talk, every game's difficult in this league. Everyone, the West is all bunched up. We're all separated by 2 or 3 points. And Minnesota's been on just recently a little tough stretch, but they've started off well. And they're a dynamic team. Their front three are really good, really fast front three. They play the same shape that we do. So it's going to be a battle of wills in this game, I believe. And it goes back to what I said earlier, is managing games, because they have the firepower to score goals, and they've been, for the most part, a stingy defensive group. And so it's really about us playing to the best of our ability and putting ourselves in a good position to take away some points from Minnesota. But I feel really good about the vibes of the group. It's always easier to coach when you're winning games. And, this week in practice has been electric. Everything's been top level execution on the training field. So I'm really excited about going to Minnesota and just leaving it all out, making this a final, given that we're not going to be back for quite some time.
All right, buddy. We'll make sure that circadian rhythm is locked in, okay, before the game on Saturday. And go get all three. Cheering for you as always, all right?
Thanks, man. Appreciate you, bud.
Pablo Mastroeni, RSL, one more match before the 2-month World Cup break. It's Minnesota coming up on Saturday with a 2:30 kick, and it can be seen on Apple Television. All right, if your house is cold in the winter, even though you have the heater on, and if it's hot in the summer, even though you have the air conditioning on, you need new windows, okay? New windows can be pricey, but I have good news for you. If you take advantage of the spring window special from Advanced Window Products, our good friends Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, of course, Nate, still the mayor of Sac Lake City, longtime NFL vet, they're giving you $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. So windows are expensive. You probably need them in your house. Certainly, it'll save you money in the long run if you're jacking up the heat or the AC. But the spring window special from Advanced Window Products can save you $2,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. Now, if you only need 3 or 4 windows, discounts can be prorated for fewer than 10 windows. Bottom line, family-owned, 1986, local people here to help you. So go to advancedwindows.com. That's advancedwindows.com. Or give them a call today at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, our good friends at Advanced Window Products. All right, we'll catch a break. Tim McMahon joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Will tonight be as exciting as game one? Going to be hard to live up to that one. San Antonio took game one in double overtime. Spurs Thunder tonight, 6:30 Mountain Time on NBC and Peacock. I would imagine our next guest is there, boots on the ground, Tim McMahon. Am I correct in my assertion?
Howdy, partner. Indeed, you are. I'm talking to you from the bowels of the Paycom Center.
Well, I appreciate the time. So, of course, let's just start with what was an unbelievable back and forth. Look, you and I have talked all year. This is the series we all wanted, and we get it. Main takeaways from that double OT win from San Antonio in game one.
I mean, it sure as hell lived up to the hype, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
We thought this was going to be an all-time great series and an all-time great rivalry. And, the first playoff game between, these chapters of these teams is just, one of the best games that I've ever witnessed. One of the best games, certainly, that I've ever covered. And Wemby, dude, a 22-year-old was that dominant. And I love everything about his game. I love everything about his mind frame. This guy sat there and during the MVP presentation pregame, saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander get the trophy that he believes belongs to him. And, this series, among many other things, is an opportunity for Victor Wembanyama to prove what he believes, and that is that he is the best player in the world. He has a chance to rip the crown off Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's head. That's the kind of performance that he had in game one. He's got to do it at least 3 more times. What's crazy is, even as great as he was, and that 7.5-foot alien doesn't hit a 30-footer, the Thunder win the game. So, can't wait for game 2 tonight.
Who's the best player in the world right now, today? Who is it?
Well, a couple days ago, it was Victor Wembanyama. Can Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, can he land a punch in this series? They need him to. But, as of right now, I'm going to say Victor because, again, to me, this series is going to determine who gets to have that title. And Spurs are up 1-0 after just a historically dominant performance by him. 41, 24 rebounds, 3 blocks. And that just starts to scratch the surface of the way that he impacted that game.
What now? Mark Daigneault obviously is a smart guy and a good coach. We saw them try several different things against Wembanyama in game one. We saw Caruso, we saw Chet, we saw Lou Dort. What sort of is he on a level now where you're just kind of assuming he's going to get his? How does Oklahoma City? How do they guard him tonight, Tim?
All of those ways, you're never going to give him the same look over and over and over again. I'm curious to see if maybe Chet gets more of the, a bigger share as a primary defender. But I'll be honest with you, he had 41, certainly on the glass was a problem, especially when they guarded him with the smaller guy. He got a couple duck-ins there late in the second overtime to kind of seal the deal where if he catches it there, you're doomed. But Thunder felt like they didn't lose the game on the defensive end of the floor. They felt like they lost the game because they couldn't generate enough offense. And that's also very much a Victor Wembanyama conversation.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers in front of me, but it's not just 3 blocks. And Tim, it's not just shots altered. It's also people just scared to even try. You'll see a guy beat his man, then realize that Wembanyama's there, and he'll search dribble to the other side of the floor. Or there'll be a guy with a wide open 3, and Wembanyama's closing out on him. He doesn't even take it. It's not just block shots or shots altered. We need to come up with a new term, like scared dudes that don't want to take shots.
Well, I call those reconsideration.
I like it.
And how many times do you see somebody drive against, say they drive baseline against the Spurs and they just drive right past the basket and bring it on to the other end? Or, they'll penetrate and they'll put it in reverse, or they'll penetrate and they'll kick it out. Our ESPN tracking had Wemby, or had the Thunder as 2 of 10 on shots contested by Wemby. And to me, the remarkable stat there is the 10. They only took 10 shots that were contested by a guy who covers more ground than any defensive player that we've ever seen before. And that tells you just how much they avoided him. And, Shai said, hey, you have to be smart. You have to be patient attacking him, but you also have to be aggressive. You can't be timid. If you're timid, that's when he puts a stranglehold on the game, and he had a stranglehold on that game.
So De'Aaron Fox sits game one, and Dylan Harper as a rookie goes 47 minutes and gives you 24 points, 11 boards, 7 steals, 6 assists, and maybe most impressively, Tim, for a rookie in a conference finals, 1 turnover in 47 minutes is kind of a primary ball handler. What do you make of that performance?
20-year-old kid.
Yeah, wild.
Come on. Making his first career playoff start. And look, I believe that he will be the Spurs' second best player soon. And I've been kind of asking Spurs folks what they think of that. I've yet to have anyone tell me that I'm wrong. This kid is going to be a superstar. He didn't get in the Rookie of the Year mix. Obviously, Cooper Flagg and Connor Knippel both had crazy rookie seasons. He didn't have as big a role on the Spurs because they're so loaded in the backcourt. But this kid is dynamic. He has as good a layup package as anybody to come in the league since Kyrie Irving. And he's 6'6", 220, strong as hell, and uses that. The combination of strength and finesse from him is really, really impressive. And then, you hit on it, the poise for a 20-year-old kid. He doesn't look like a rookie out there. There's nothing about him that looks like a rookie. And, he's the playoff run that he's on, he's definitely a rookie of the playoffs. I'll put it like that.
No doubt. Do you have any insight on the status of De'Aaron Fox for tonight?
He's questionable. I think it's, questionable leaning towards not on the floor, but we will find out here. I am not certain of that.
Yeah, I would imagine Dylan Harper's performance might make him feel comfortable just to give him some more rest. You know what I mean? I guess you kind of have that convenience.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though. They're going to have an issue because when you have a guy like this doing what Dylan Harper's doing and you put him in the starting lineup, it's hard to take him back out. And I mean, I'm not just talking about for the rest of the series. I'm talking about for the next 15 years.
Yeah. So as far as how they typically handle Wembanyama's minutes, look, it's conference finals, so you got to play your best players as much as you want. But the only thing that is going to derail this is potential health. Were you surprised that he went 49 in game one?
No, because he needed to.
Right.
And it went double overtime. It was that kind of game. Shea, I believe, ended up at 51. And look, obviously they don't want his minutes getting up in the 40s, but they're going to be in the high 30s. Might get into the 40s. He's going to play as much as he needs to play for the Spurs to be able to win a game. And look, his minutes were, let's be honest, one of the main knocks on him as an MVP candidate was he didn't even average 30 minutes per game during the regular season. Some of that was minutes restrictions coming off of injuries. Some of that was the Spurs were blowing out a bunch of teams, and so he was chilling during a lot of fourth quarters. But there was a question of, okay, as the minutes increase in the playoffs, is he going to have enough gas left in the tank? And you remember that game late in the regular season where it goes into overtime in Denver, that combination of Mile High Air and Joker, like he looked gassed in the overtime period when Joker was able to, have a little scoring flurry to finish him off. His 49th minute might have been his best minute. He got that just ridiculous dunk on Chet Holmgren, his old pal, for an and one. He had enough, he caught the lob and finished it. And then he just completely swallowed up that drive by Jalen Williams. I mean, pinned it on the glass, swiped the rebound all in one motion, and then went in over there and posed for the Spurs bench, basically saying, I am that dude. So didn't look too tired in minute 49.
No, he didn't. I'm going to ask you about OKC adjustments while also acknowledging that game could have easily gone the way of Oklahoma City. They got to find a way to get more out of Chet, but he's dealing with Wembanyama on the other side of the floor. What do you think OKC does differently tonight?
Well, they've got to figure out a way to make Wemby move, right? If he's just able to kind of play hokey pokey and avoid defensive 3 seconds while basically planting himself in the paint, then he just shuts down everything inside basically the 2-point or the 3-point line. From elbows down, he covers that whole territory. You got to make a move. And they've got to figure out ways to get Shea the ball with an advantage. Just Shea initiating at the top of the floor, and you've got, Wemby down there. They're sending the double, or they just got his man on him and then guys on the elbows. That's going to be very tough. They've got to find ways to move him, to move the ball, to get him in situations where there's cracks that he can attack. As far as Chet goes, they don't really call plays for Chet. His stuff, as Mark Dagenhalt calls it, his stuff comes downstream in the offense. So they feel like if they can improve the kind of the process of the offense, that Chet will find stuff within that flow, but they didn't have that flow the other night.
Moving out east, I'm not going to say I almost turned the game off, but Nick's down 22 in the fourth, and you're like, there's no way they're coming back. And it wasn't just because of the deficit. It was because of the way that Cleveland was guarding. And then Jalen Brunson gets going, some bad turnovers from Cleveland. James Harden, another game where he had more turnovers than field goals made. Landry Shamet shuts Donovan's water off. He had 26 through 3, ended with 29. And the Knicks outscore the Cavs 44-11 to finish the game. What stood out to you about game one of the Eastern Conference Finals?
What stood out was just an all-around painful collapse by the Cleveland Cavaliers. And, you mentioned James Harden just absolutely got hunted and roasted by Jalen Brunson and the Knicks while they pulled off that crazy comeback. And, Kenny Atkinson just had an awful performance down the stretch of that game, leaving with timeouts in his pocket, and not figuring out a way to halt any kind of momentum or slow down the Knicks offensively. I usually don't believe in momentum going game to game in a playoff series. This might be an exception, man. That's the kind of loss that lingers. Especially, look, James Harden's got a lot of playoff demons. Donovan Mitchell, this is his first taste of the conference finals. I don't know if that's a loss that the Cavaliers can bounce back from. We'll see.
Moving over to a story that certainly surprised me, and you're the guy for this, look, you hire a new president of basketball ops, and he's going to want to bring in his own people. It's not a new thing, but what was your maybe you saw this coming because you know the team better than anybody, but Masai Ujiri has elected to move on from Jason Kidd, who, of course, took the Mavs to a finals and another conference finals. How did this all go down, Tim?
I did see this coming, and I'll tell you why. Jason Kidd wanted to be the president of the team. He wanted to move upstairs, and if that happens, his plan was to bring in Sean Sweeney, who's the associate head coach of the Spurs, who was in Dallas with Jay Kidd, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn before that. He's known for months that wasn't going to happen. But, when they go out and hire a president, bring in Masai Ujiri, Jay Kidd was not involved in that process whatsoever. He wasn't even informed in advance. He found out when it was reported. So that was a pretty clear sign. Okay, he's certainly not a priority for the ownership group. And Masai was hired with the full authority to do whatever he wanted to do in the basketball operations department, including moving on from a coach who had 4 years and more than $40 million remaining on his contract. So given all those circumstances, then when Masai is asked about Jay Kidd in his initial press conference, and he says, we're evaluating everything from head to toe, it didn't feel like Jay Kidd was going to be in Dallas a whole lot longer, and that's obviously the way that things went down.
Any thoughts on who the next coach could be?
There's names being tossed around. John Shire's a name that's being tossed around. And he might end up being involved in the interview process. I would say that would go against the grain of Masai Ujiri hires. Nick Nurse was a rising assistant coach who had head coaching experience overseas and in the G League. That obviously worked out well for him in Toronto. Darko Rajakovic, who's their head coach now, similar type of background, and the other coaches that were part of that process are guys like Jordy Fernandez, Charles Lee, Miss Johnson. So he tends to go more the rising, young, impressive assistant coach in the NBA route, but we will see. All he's saying now is it's going to be a comprehensive search that's going to, they'll look in Europe, they'll look in colleges, they'll look at, proven NBA head coaches, and then they'll look at the rising assistants.
What do you think is fair to say? I mean, you outlined the general situation behind the scenes with J. Kidd wanting a front office job, but it seems like from the outside looking in, he didn't just do a good job of winning games. I felt like he did a good job coaching Cooper Flagg last year. What do you think is fair to say about the Jason Kidd tenure in Dallas?
Certainly ups and downs, mixed results, but was it the helm of the conference finals run? Was it the helm of the finals run? Everybody who had any influence on the Luka trades kind of stained forever. It was at least understood. If he wasn't directly involved in the trade, it was understood that his patience had worn thin with Luka. So, that's a part of this. And this is a franchise that's still in the process of trying to move on from that. They're trying to get people to stop mourning Luka's departure and start savoring having this 19-year-old prodigy on their roster. And Masai Ujiri felt like they needed a clean slate to do that.
Okay, a few minutes left, and I'll set you loose. We are here in Salt Lake, so of course we'll talk a little Jazz. We are about a month away from the NBA draft, where the Jazz hold the number 2 overall pick, and with every day brings a new rumor about Washington being willing to do this and Utah being interested in that. And report surfaced today that Cameron Boozer's camp believes he's in the mix at number 2. I just wonder if you have any intel as of late as far as how the Jazz are approaching both the draft process and this offseason.
I'll be honest with you, I have not touched base with any folks in the Jazz front office here since the lottery. I don't have any intel. I don't trust them to shoot straight until the draft comes anyway. I'd be surprised if they trade up to number 1, just because knowing the way that Danny Ainge operates and Austin Ainge operates, I don't think they want to be on the on the wrong end of the value proposition. But we'll see. We'll see if they think AJ DeBance is worth paying a premium price. And then generally the people I talk to who it's their job to know these things, they feel like that top 4 is 2 tiers: DeBanson, Peterson, and then Boozer and Wilson. There are some exceptions. There are some people, especially some people who are very analytically influenced, who think Boozer might end up being the best player in this draft. I'm not sure where the Jazz fall on that. I know they're looking for a face of the franchise type of guy. They certainly swung on the upside with Ace Bailey last year. I think just in pure upside, Peterson's probably has a higher ceiling. But Boozer, I do think would be a safer pick. I don't know that the Jazz are looking to make the safer pick.
Last thing, this narrative continues to be out there that, Ryan has long wanted AJ and AJ has long wanted to stay here in Utah. He's even on record. Do you think any of that plays into any of this? I mean, if you're Washington, did you see AJ's look when you got the number 1 overall pick? Is there any sort of messaging behind the scenes to Washington like, no, we want Utah? Do you think any of that is relevant at all, Tim?
I think I don't think it's completely irrelevant, but it's a draft. It's not free agency. The number 1 pick doesn't get to choose his team. So, it's interesting. Now, the other thing I'll point out is they don't necessarily have to trade with the Jazz if they're looking to move the pick. If Chicago's looking to move up, they could work out a trade and move down to 4. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. I think the most likely scenario is that Washington sticks right there and picks AJ DeBance with the number 1 overall pick, and the Jazz are on the clock at number 2.
All right, buddy, we'll set you loose. Enjoy the game tonight. If it's anything like game 1, we're in for a treat. Thank you, Tim.
All right, appreciate it.
Tim McMahon, he is live on the ground, Oklahoma City, San Antonio tonight. It's about 90 minutes away from tip. Game 1 was an all-time instant classic. We'll see what game 2 means. All right, shout out to my Ogden people. Love me some Ogden people. You can join me tomorrow at Wasatch Front Kia, 770 West Riverdale Road in Ogden, for the annual Memorial Day weekend tent sale. You can enter to win a cooler and more. Tents go up, prices go down. Get up to $1,000 in trade-in assistance this week at Wasatch Front Kia at 770 West Riverdale Road in Ogden. All right, we'll catch a break. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program comes your way next right here on ESPN 700. Yeah, I don't know why I've been nostalgic. Past few weeks, I've done a deep dive into 90s female singer-songwriters. Put together a massive Lilith Fair playlist. Little Sarah McLachlan, little Indigo Girls.
Dido?
There's a Dido song on there. Actually
Good.
put one on today. Let's see. Little Natalie Merchant, little 10,000 Maniacs.
Here we go.
Little Annie Lennox for you. I could keep going. Melissa
Four Non
Etheridge. No.
on,
I should look at that, though. I tried to keep it 90s centric. But, yeah, I'm up to 40, 50 songs. Driving around town today. You know, music has a really...
Jewel?
Yes. Oh, plenty. In fact, let me pull it up.
Utah?
That's right. Was she born here?
I don't know. But she lived in, like, rural Utah at some point in her childhood.
Got a little Alanis Morissette, Cranberries, Anna Nyack, Breathe, excellent song. Meredith Brooks, just fired up a little Alanis for you. No Doubt, Sean Colvin, come on. I am very proud of this playlist I've created. Little Annie Lennox, Eurythmics, Desiree, You Gotta Be, oh man.
Is Tracy Chapman more 80s?
Tracy Chapman is on the playlist. She's 90s for sure. There's a little Jewel, just fired up. Didn't Jewel, Edie Brickell? Oh, man. Listeners of a certain age are nodding their head right now. I take pride in my playlist, Porter. It's not something I come to lightly. You need to understand this.
You'll have to send me that one.
I'll lob it to you. You'll appreciate it. All right. In the NHL, the Vegas Golden Knights, who beat the Utah Mammoth, have advanced to take on the Juggernaut. I don't know that anyone's beating Colorado, man. But game one tonight between Colorado and Vegas will be on this radio station. We also have game two between San Antonio and Oklahoma City, which should be a lot of fun. By the way, excuse me, in kind of a random piece of news, the judge assigned to the Brendan Sorsby case has recused himself. So, Judge Philip Hayes grew up in Lubbock, where the lawsuit was filed, and earned his undergrad and law degree from Texas Tech. And he recused himself with no explanation, but I think the explanation is pretty obvious. So we'll see what comes down. Sorsby has tried to expedite this process through his attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, who's as powerful as any attorney in the landscape of sports, period. College pro sports, filed an injunction against the NCAA that would allow him to play for Texas Tech after he was the number one transfer in the entire country, according to ESPN. So, of course, the NCAA prohibits student athletes from betting on any NCAA-sanctioned sport, professional or collegiate, by the way. Penalties on the table, permanent ineligibility, especially in cases which athletes wagered on their own team. And Sorsby did bet on Indiana, did not play in the games. Did you hear his excuse that he was trying to bond with his teammates?
By gambling on Turkish soccer games?
Seems like a stretch.
It's 100% a stretch. Listen, at this point, he is fighting for his career. He is fighting for a bunch of money. I'm sure, as we know, he is in several different legal situations at different schools and otherwise. So I get it. You have to throw out all the defenses. Your lawyers are going to do those things on your behalf. But we can also look at them at face value and say, what? Yeah. So it's a mental health issue, but you were doing it intentionally to get closer with your teammates. So are you telling me that all your teammates at Indiana were also gambling on Indiana games? Maybe you need to look into that too.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
By the way, one of Sorsby's sponsors, Genius Sports, the exclusive distributor of official NCAA data that feeds to authorized sports books. Got an NIL deal with the data company that feeds the sports books what they use to set the lines.
Maybe some more things to look at. I don't know, man. It's obviously, as we've talked about, it's a can of worms once you open up this Pandora's box, and we're finding out that if you're open to maybe pushing the envelope a little bit, there's a lot of different conflicts of interest, a lot of different things that you can get tangled up in. And Brendan Sorsby's an example of that now.
Yep, so the judge has recused himself. He is a Texas Tech alum. Big Ten meetings continue to roll along. Tony Petitti laid out a 24-team model today and basically presented the reasoning, which is pretty simple. More games equals more revenue. So it's kind of like the Big Ten and Fox against the SEC and ESPN. We still need to essentially have those two conferences agree to what's best for the sport, which, again, as I've talked about for 3-4 years now, underscores exactly who is in charge of this entire thing. So there you go. So, yeah, fun night of sports ahead. Excited to see. It's wild. We talk about, like, hey, what can the Cavs do to adjust? Sam Merrill's three to win the game. Did you hear Mike Breen had the bang ready?
That's because it was halfway down.
Mike Breen gave a halfway bang because Merrill's shot nearly went down. And Oklahoma City was a baby's breath away from winning game one as well. I don't know that you need adjustments. It's just you got to make a couple of shots here or there.
Right. No, the adjustments are, I mean, you're in the conference finals at this point. So it's going to be a game-to-game thing. Obviously, Cleveland has to adjust maybe some backcourt defense, finding a way to limit Jalen Brunson. And then on the OKC side, it's about finding a way to, I don't even know if it's combat Wemby, and at this point, maybe just get him in foul trouble or bruise him up, right? We talked about this with Smitty at nauseum the other day when Tony Parks was in studio and asked Thurl about it. And Thurl kind of threw his hands up, like, what do you do? I don't know. It feels like the natural answer to a Wemby is like a Rudy Gobert, Mark Eden, a Ralph Sampson. But it might actually be more like a Ben Wallace. Like, I don't know. Get him off of his center of gravity. Get him out of the paint. Outside of that, get him in foul trouble. Like, those are the adjustments you have to make because just playing straight up is obviously not going to work. It's going to be interesting to see how these teams play that 7-game series chess match.
During game one, Chet tried, didn't work. Isaiah Hartenstein, they're like, you're not playing maybe the rest of the series. You played 12 minutes game one. They tried Dort for a minute. They tried Caruso actually had some minutes where he was pretty effective.
But then once you realize that, they just started throwing the ball at the rim.
Yeah.
And Wemby had dunks and layups and tips,
Yeah. So we'll see if Chet can get going tonight. Shea had an inefficient 24. Needed 23 shots. He also had 12 assists, 5 steals, though. And we'll see if young Dylan Harper, who looks like he is going to get the start tonight with De'Aaron Fox potentially sidelined, can keep doing these things that he did in his first career playoff start. How about your first career playoff start at the age of 20? You go for 24 points, 11 boards, 6 assists, 7 steals. And in 47 minutes as the primary ball handler, you had 1 turnover. Stephon Castle had 11, by the way. Our guy got loose. I think it's going to be an epic series. The question comes down to this. So there's this narrative around the New York Knicks that Mike Brown has decided to go with this whole cat at the top of the key as the point guard thing in preparation for a potential matchup with the Spurs to pull Wembanyama away from the basket. I would love to see the Knicks hang a banner. Can they make either OKC or San Antonio even kind of uncomfortable?
I don't know.
I don't think they can.
I think there is an interesting angle there. You mentioned Cat combined with Mitchell Robinson, at least making Victor do some things that he's not, usually doing on a night-to-night basis with those two front court players. But ultimately, I don't think so. It feels like the Western Conference Finals decides the eventual NBA champion. But as I told Tony on Monday, you never know when Victor Wembanyama comes down awkward and rolls an ankle. You never know when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in a game 6 or 7 gets injured, right? We never want to speak those things into existence, but they're realities of the sport. We saw it with Kevin Durant when they were well on their way to a finals win. That's just that's part of the game. So you survive in advance, Spence, and then you see who you got once you get there, and then we can assess the situation.
All right, before we say goodnight, let's send one of you to play golf. Time now for the ESPN 700 Festival of Tees. Powered by the Utah Golf Association, each day, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to Sean from 11 to 2. Listen to me from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700. Details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. Text now to win at 877-353-0700. We're sending you to Davis Park. Say something nice about Porter. He watches birds and hikes, produces radio, goes to the gym, gets the lipids in.
Plenty of those.
How are the lipids these days?
Too many lipids lately.
Too many lipids?
I'm breaching 200 pounds at the moment.
What's going on with you? Is it gain season?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. The issue is that I've never been able to really gain weight, even no matter how much I lift, because I do so much walking around and biking and such.
Yeah.
So I'm on the seafood diet, which is not seafood literally, but I see food and I eat it.
Oh, okay. Well,
all of it.
Well, hang in there, bud.
Chocolate milk.
Ooh, I love it. That is a guilty pleasure of mine. I love me some chocolate milk.
Yeah.
I'm on board. So text in, say something nice about Porter. Maybe watch YouTube and look at his figure. Say something nice about his figure because apparently he's feeling insecure about that.
No, it's a good thing. It's all good.
877-353-0700. Shout out O-Town. I am infiltrating your space tomorrow. I will be in Ogden at Wasatch Front Kia. What comes our way, Porter, on a Thursday edition of the show?
Thursday edition of The Drive, out and about, as you mentioned, at Wasatch Front Kia. Jason Christ talking some midseason soccer. Dave McMiniman for your NBA Daily Assist. We'll chat with Craig Bowler. Jack, some NBA draft and NBA playoffs, I'm sure, as well. Our friends from Handy and Handy for some sports court, and we'll go from there on a Thursday.
Come on out and say what's up to my O-Town peeps tomorrow, Riverdale Road, and we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Andy Larson, Patrick Overholt, Pablo Mastroretti, and Tim McMahon. If you missed any of the sound from the show, the website is ESPN700sports.com. Download the mobile app, take us on the go, and then check out the podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. Enjoy some NHL Stanley Cup hockey coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700.